And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. Don't be late to roll call. And if you are, make sure you put in your 28s. Anyway, here we are. 8:05 live Eastern Time, 5:05 on the Pacific Coast. Man, it's getting crazy over here. I'm actually in LA County, and man, you see black skies. You can smell the smoke in different spots of LA County. Some spots have been evacuated. Pretty wild over here. But thank God I'm safe. So I took off. That's the beauty of having an RV. Drive 3 hours away. I'm in Santa Barbara. You know, that's the beauty about having the RV. I can drive away from it. So, good morning.
Yeah. My wife was worried. She's like, "Is he still there?" I was like, "You know what?" I was like, "He told me he was leaving, but I don't know where he went."
Just drive away.
So yeah. So everybody, thanks for tuning in this morning. We're gonna have Jim Walden come on about 8:30, 8:40. Jim Walden's candidate for New York City mayor. I think he's got a pretty decent platform, man. I spoke with him offline several times. Seems like a genuine person. Again, I haven't supported anyone as an individual. I don't believe Eric has yet either, and we haven't made a decision as a podcast, as a collective, if we're going to even support someone at all. So this is just to kind of get to know Jim. I'll tell you right now. My biggest problem with politicians is I feel like they do not have the conversations with the public that they do at the dinner table. And it detracts us from being real people. And that's always been my shtick since I got out here, since before I got out on social media and anything. And the fact that Jim wants to come on and speak with us, I got to say right now, even if I didn't support any platform he had whatsoever, I have the utmost respect for him. And because that's what I see from politicians is they won't even have the conversation with you. Jim's reaching across. And by the way, talking to him about his policies, there's not much I disagree with that, if anything at all. So like, what do you think about that, Eric? It's like, I mean, the fact, like, even like, let's just pretend we didn't support a lot of the stuff he was saying. I mean, the fact that he's willing to come on here, I think I have to give him a lot of respect for.
Well, I can tell you right now. I mean, full disclosure, we don't know Jim personally. We have not endorsed Jim, but I'm impressed. You know, I say right now, he's got balls, and to be the mayor of New York City, you need someone with balls, right? Eric Adams, he may be a moron, but he sure as hell has some balls. Not necessarily that's good for New York City, good for himself and his constituents, but he showed he has some balls. And how has he done that? He's willing to come on a live podcast and have an organic conversation. He's not trying to control the narrative. He never even asked how long the conversation is going to be. He didn't even ask about the questions. He's willing to come on a live and actually have questions. It's basically a meet and greet. It's an opportunity in an arena that he's unfamiliar with. I think it shows a lot of balls, honestly. You know, it really does. He's putting himself out there, and he doesn't have a team to dictate the conversation. Also, what I'm extremely impressed by is that you had a conversation about this, about the mandate and how everyone's affected by it. And ultimately, that's a major factor is getting New York City civil service workers back to work. It would save the city millions. But not only that, have them reinstated, compensated, vindicated by putting them back to work with back pay. And why I'm impressed, I don't know him personally. I don't know his policies, but I read his bio. And he backed up his bio. He's taken on the mob, and he's willing to put pen to paper. And he put pen to paper with a memorandum. So no matter what, if there's actually policy that comes out of this in the next coming couple of months, but the fact that he's willing to put pen to paper, you know, that's something that you could actually hold him accountable. So to me, I'm impressed.
Oh yeah, no, totally. And and full disclosure, yeah, I spoke with Jim. He suggested that he would like to come on the podcast. I said, yeah, no, we'd love to have you. You know, we've had candidates run in for New York City seats in the past. I think we've been respectful to all of them. I said we do two formats. We'll give you the option. We do a format where we do a recorded interview, And we do a format where we have live interviews where there's an audience on there and they're interacting with us. And he chose the live. He said he'd rather do the live interview. And again, he never asked what the questions were going to be, what we're going to talk about, how long we're going to go on for. So I think that shows the utmost courage right there. And that shows that that shows that you're confident in yourself and you're confident in your abilities and you're confident in your platform. Justin Vest said any politician would go on a platform. That's not true. The largest platform in the world is the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan gets more views on his podcast than Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, Newsmax, all of them combined. And Kamala Harris did not take that opportunity. And Joe Rogan, when she was in Texas, said, if you want to come here at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll wait up for you. We'll do it at 3 o'clock in the morning. But no, she wanted only an hour interview. She wanted him to go to her. She didn't want to go to so I don't think I honestly don't think that every politician is going to take that opportunity. I mean, look at the unions. Look at the races for the unions. Who came on here? Nobody. When we look at Eric Adams, he goes on Corey Pegues' podcast that's getting 100 views. Right? He's getting 100. I'm sorry, like it is what it is. He's getting 100 people that by the end of today, there are going to be thousands and thousands of people that are going to have watched or listened to this podcast. And Eric Adams knows that the entirety of the police department, whether they're supporters of myself or Eric or the things that are coming out of this podcast or not, they listen to it. So why wouldn't you take that opportunity? So I don't think that every politician takes the opportunity. I think more often when we look at political candidates or people that are in elected office, they kind of hide from actual conversation.
I actually think that the overwhelming majority of politicians, and you could box and you could put the union presidents into that realm of politicians because there is a political arena there. They dictate the media that they're actually willing to converse with because it's not organic, because they only want to scratch the surface. So it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. So again, I give Jim a lot of credit. I said we don't know him personally, but this is a great opportunity. This is a meet and greet. It's an introduction with Jim, and hopefully we have some more follow-up interviews as this mayoral candidate progresses, and hopefully Jim can actually get himself into the arena. I wish him luck. I wish him nothing but luck. Anyone that's willing to put themselves in that position and in such a highlight and prolific position and put themselves out there, I open them up with welcome arms. So we're not here to beat opposition. We're here to meet Jim. Let's greet him. Let's be professional. Let's ask him some questions, get an idea who Jim is, his background, his policies. And again, the fact that he's willing to come on this podcast and have a live interview with organic questions, make no mistake about it. John and I did not prepare questions. We want this to be completely organic. Jim didn't try to dictate the format. He didn't try to dictate the time. And that's what Kamala Harris did. Kamala Harris and her campaign tried to dictate with Joe Rogan the place, the time, the questions. Joe Rogan podcast, exactly what John said, gets more views than any other mainstream media. And Kamala Harris had that opportunity, and her campaign wanted to dictate it because an organic conversation that's going to flow in a long form really exposes who someone is and if there's actually any policies there. So you had to give Trump credit. He sat there for 3 hours, didn't even drink water, didn't use the bathroom, sat there, paid attention, had a long-form conversation. In a long-form conversation, a lot's going to come out. Someone's real personality is going to come out. There's certain things you just can't hide.
No, absolutely. I agree. Speaking of the Joe Rogan podcast, Donald Trump was recently on there, right? He went on there and Kamala Harris didn't. And one of the things he spoke about was the policies surrounding water usage in California, and the fact that they weren't weeding out these forests, and the fact that they weren't allowing water to flow through the forest to save fish. And he was just saying how crazy the policy is and how that's going to lead to more forest fires. So, while politics often isn't like a sexy conversation, or it's not, a fun conversation, or most times it's a negative conversation, not even a positive conversation. I think it's vitally important because now we look at that. He actually got made fun of throughout media for bringing that up. And now you see the result of all this. And now the fire department's telling you there's no water in the hydrants because of the actions they took politically. So politics is your life. Politics affects your life so much. I don't remember who it was. I think it might have been Plato that said that if you do not get involved in the political process, your life is going to be dictated by those who are willing to. I could something along those lines, but it's really true. And I think I've come to notice that in my adult life, it was something I never looked at. I never watched the news as a kid. I never cared. I didn't even know who was in office. I barely knew that Bill Clinton was the president. If that scandal didn't break out, I would have never known who the president. Like, it just is what it was. It wasn't. I was concerned with every other thing but politics.
Rich Rod starting out early. Coffee and donuts. Here we go. Good morning, guys. Great show. Good morning to you, brother. Thank you so much. Always dipping into his pocket. Coffee and donuts. Getting ready for Jim Walden. As I said, if you have an opportunity before Jim Walden comes on, it's good to have a background information on your subject. He's got an impressive bio. So Jim Walden, ironically, wants to be the mayor of New York City, and he's got an interesting background because he was a prosecutor for the Eastern District, and I think it's kind of ironic. He was a prosecutor for the Eastern District for about a decade, from 1993 to 2002, and ironically, who's being investigated by the Eastern District and the Southern District? Eric Adams and his entire administration. So it's there's some kind of irony there. But I look forward to meeting Jim. As I said, I'm impressed. The fact that he was willing to put pen to paper. John and I spoke about the pen to paper he put when it comes to putting back New York City civil service workers back to work with back pay. And to me, it didn't read like policy. It read like a memorandum. But I think it's a great precursor, if he actually gets elected, to having policy. And what was impressive, the last line of his memorandum said, "Hold me accountable." So he's willing to put pen to paper, which means that document's saved. At any time, we can say, "Hey, Jim, here's promises that you made. We have this piece of paper, and you never came through." So that says a lot. That says a lot about who Jim is. So time will tell if he actually backs up his promises. But the fact that he was willing to put documentation, he was a lawyer. He knows once documentation's out there, that's always documentation that can be presented to you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I like I said, I'm totally impressed by it. But just to show this video, I think this highlights the importance of actual conversations, long form conversations, because you see how people care. You see, and look, Donald Trump, he's not from California. He's not. He's a New York guy. He lives in Florida. He's a Florida resident. But yet he cares. You know how he cares? Because he's talking about the issues that matter. He's talking about the things that don't make sense to him. Listen to Donald Trump here on the Joe Rogan podcast. And unfortunately, it's not that he predicted the future, but everyone knew what would happen. And, a lot of people said he was fear-mongering. And now we're seeing the results of bad politics being brought down on people.
They said, "We have no water." I said, "Do you have a drought?" "No, we don't have a drought." I said, "Why do you have no water?" "Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north of water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land. Water for your forests. Your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that are falling.
Yeah.
That,
And And here we are. Here we are. You're evacuating. There's millions of people fleeing. And you know what's the price of this going to be financially on insurance companies, on individuals? Because we know individuals, you know, when there are disasters, you know, we're getting the short end of the stick. The people that have been paying this insurance money, we're always going to get. I mean, it happened to me and Sandy. It happened to a lot of you during Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, and another unfortunate event. So, you know, good policy, good politics could avoid a lot of these problems. You know, again, politics controls your life. It's everything. It's everything. And you see it right here.
Well, I think, you know, I look back and think about something Dana White said on an interview. And he said that, you know, he said the least amount of government intervention in your life is your ultimate goal. And I agree with that. However, that's not necessarily the case, that no matter what, the government does have a lot of control, and the government has a lot of interjection on what goes on with your life. I mean, look, you see it in New York City right now. You can't even drive more than 20 miles per hour in most parts of New York City. In most parts of New York City, you can't even use your car. It's created for bike lanes, for pedestrians. They're pushing, the politicians are pushing you out from driving your car. They're trying to push you into the subway with congestion pricing. So no matter what, the politicians have a major impact and a major effect on your life. And what I've learned over the years now is how important local politics plays into your life in comparison than politics, you know, on the federal level. You know, we talk about the president. The president, of course, it's important, but I never realized until now, especially the last year, the tenure of my career, as policy started to change with the Civilian Complaint Review Board, the laws started to change, and how they started to weave into each other, interjected, had an impact on my career. And you see how local politicians and legislation has a major impact on your daily life. Yeah, actually, it's far more intrusive than actually what happens on the federal level. VSS Venturas, shout out to you. Here we go. More coffee and donuts, $20. Since you brought up philosophy, the writings of Marcus Aurelius are a great read, as those of Cicero. Much can be learned from the past, and those who choose not to are doomed to repeat it. Absolutely. That's why I was a history major in college. You definitely learn from the past, because the best prediction of the future is a reflection of the past. So initially, I went into the as a history degree because I was interested in law. But it is important to understand history so that we can actually learn and move forward and not repeat mistakes or errors of the past.
Yeah, so someone sent me the quote that I was trying to get out, but I mangled. So it was Plato. I was correct about that, but it's one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. That was the quote, yeah. So in substance, I was somewhat there. Not 100%. So what I have up on the screen right now is I have another mayoral candidate, and I'm going to mangle his name. I haven't really heard too much coming from this man. I know the reporter, Jeff Colton, seems to be a big fan because anything this guy tweets about, Jeff Colton retweets it. So his name is Zohran Kwame Mamdani. So he's running for New York City mayor's office as well.
Say that 5 times.
So he's a New York State Assembly member for District 36. He's running for mayor to freeze the rent, make buses fast and free, and deliver child care at no cost. Socialist. This is from his handle. This is not me making this up, by the way. This is from his own handle himself. I'm reading directly from his Twitter handle, where he has 43,000 followers. He lists his location as Astoria, Queens, and Rhody and Roses. So Zohran for New York City. So okay, so let's say because in full disclosure, we've gotten so many people. Everybody wants to dictate what the conversation's going to be, what the questions are going to be. Everyone's sending messages. You got to ask him this, and you got to ask Jim that, and you got to ask them. And I'm like, oh, okay. So the one guy that actually appears to be an adult in the room, that's willing to actually have a conversation with the people, you want us to corner him and attack him like hungry wolves. I'm like, yeah, we're absolutely not going to do that. We're going to speak about his policy. We're going to speak about this because what we would be doing essentially is propping up people like this that are afraid to come on here and not let you hear their voice and hear their plan when it comes to defunding the police, how socialism works in New York City. What does that look like for New York City? But he did go on the Brian Lear show, who apparently is very fond of socialist policies. So let's hear what this mayoral candidate's ideas for New York City. Let's see how we're going to make New York City great again. Let's hear what Zohan's plan is.
So I understand you have a new policy proposal that you would like to share with listeners and with the public for the first time right now. Want to do that?
Absolutely, Brian. I'm incredibly excited to announce a new policy proposal. It is a new year after all, and a good time to talk about new beginnings in our city. You know, about 125,000 New Yorkers are born across our city every year. And as mayor, we are going to provide every new family with what we're calling baby baskets. It's a collection of essential goods and resources for new parents free of charge, including items like diapers, baby wipes, nursing pads, postpartum pads, swaddles, books, and more. And each of these baskets will also include a resource guide of information on the city's newborn home visiting program, breastfeeding, postpartum depression, and more. These are all critical resources, frankly, for combating postpartum maternal mortality as well. And what I'm talking about is a relatively small investment. We estimate just shy of $19 million a year, with potentially huge rewards for healthy development and family stability, rewards that we've seen play out in more than 91 examples across the world, whether it be Scotland or whether it be here in the United States, where a federal government pilot showed that 64% of moms in a baby box model initiative reported improved mental health, 63% reported a decrease in final stress, and the program doubled participants' trust in government.
So what do you think, Eric? You know, your police department appears to be systemically corrupt from up top. Crime is riddling New York City streets and subways. Workers and middle class and the poor feel like they're being cramped down and pushed out of the city. Congestion is at an all-time high. There are no plans to alleviate any of this. Homelessness is on the rise. We see a huge mental health issue, and we have a mayoral candidate whose plan, who he went on the Brian Lear show to talk about, is he's going to give baby baskets. Baby baskets. Like, what is this a coherent conversation? If you were running for mayor in New York City, are you going to is this going to be part of your platform? And I'm not saying that this is a horrible thing and it shouldn't be done. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, like, is this the conversation we need to be having at the moment?
I thought Tom nailed it. Tom, baby baskets is 100% third world country politics to buy the poor off. They do it with Christmas food baskets. I've seen it firsthand. That's exactly what this is, some type of third world ideology to where it's almost like if we were in some small remote town, possibly in Africa, where they don't have access to media, where they may be extremely poor, maybe somewhere where they just don't have access to education, and we're educating them. We're talking about New York City, the economics and the epic center of the entire world, where we have access to private industry, and we have an opportunity there to make substantial amount of money. I mean, we talk about the land of opportunity as America. New York City is the epicenter of the land of opportunity. And this idea that we have to educate women on motherhood, I think is absolutely ridiculous. Right now, you can learn anything pretty much on YouTube. Again, this is third world ideology. Who's going to pay for this? And that's, I used to wonder all the years, Sal Greco loves to talk about low information voters. And how do we actually target these people? It's things like this. It's these little tangible items. A baby basket. We target people with these little possessions, and they just see something in the short term, this little gift, and it's a feel good moment. But but they're not necessarily looking at the deep pockets of this. Who is going to pay for this? This is yes, man. I think it's kind of insulting. Also, I think motherhood for the most part is instinctive. Is there some education behind it? Yes. But this idea of giving out a basket, well, to me, you lost already.
Yeah, I just think, it's just detracting from the conversation. All right, so listen, we got Jim Walden. He's ready to come on. Why don't we get to know Jim? We're excited to have him on here. I'd like to bring up to the stage 2025 New York City mayoral candidate Jim Walden. Jim, thanks for coming on, brother. Listen, I don't think a lot of people know your background. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and then your background, your work experience, and then why you're getting into this race, we'd love to hear it.
I appreciate that, but can I say one thing before we start? So I joined a couple minutes early because you guys started talking about Marcus Aurelius and Cicero, and I was blown away. I'm a Stoic, so I read that stuff. So hats off to you guys for elevating the conversation. So in any event, my name is Jim Walden. Hi to all your listeners. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you very much for having me on. I'll try to keep this short. I grew up not at the top of the economic ladder, but at the bottom of it. I came from a struggling steel town. My dad lost his job. I stood in benefit lines. I had to leave the house for lots of reasons that we don't need to go. Like the day after I graduated law school, I was out of that house and I had to find a place to stay. And I stayed on a floor for a year, like literally slept on a floor of a family's house for a year while I worked menial jobs. And I say menial, and they had a lot of meaning to me because they helped me save money. So I don't mean to denigrate them. I was lifted up by the opportunity to work 3 jobs at one time. That's the way that I saw it. Put myself through school, paid for it all myself, went to law school, did really well, and then got my dream job. I was an assistant U.S. attorney. I could have just stayed in a lane of going to private practice. I had a job that I left that was paying me more money than I ever thought I would make in my life. I mean, it was something like, at that time in 1992, it was like $80,000 a year. I couldn't believe it. I mean, my parents together made something like $30,000, for 3 kids and trying to keep a house that was constantly under threat. So in any event, but I chose to be a prosecutor for lots of reasons we can get into, but I really wanted to do good in the world. I went after the mob, and I went after them hard. And this is one of the reasons that I really love law enforcement. I worked with the people that I will call the Magnificent Seven. People like Bill Ali and Bill Plaquemire and Howard Safer and Dan Oates and John Cipriano and Kenny McCabe, Joe Ponzi. I mean, these people are legends. Bill Ali's name is on the Washington Memorial for Law Enforcement. Joe Ponzi's name is going to be there. These people taught me how to be an investigator, and in a lot of ways, because I didn't have a father figure, they taught me how to be a person and how to have integrity and stick to your word and do the job for the mission, not for the glory. And then, life took over. I went to private practice, obviously built my wealth, and that was a learning experience in itself because I never thought that I'd have wealth in my life. I've tried to give a lot of it back. But I also try to give back by doing what I would call good government cases, and they're cases where, and these were not popular at the big, what's called white shoe law firms where I started out. I mean, these are national, international firms. All they want you to do is to work on cases that bring in lots of money. And I said to them, listen, that's not who I am. I'll work like a dog. I'll work harder than anyone else. But for part of that time, I want to bring cases that matter to people. So I sued for people that got thrown off food stamps. I sued for kids across New York City that were being bullied. I sued for, mentally ill people that weren't getting Social Security hearings. I mean, I could go on and on. The NYCHA community, I sued for them. And these things made me feel good. It made me feel like I was giving back, but they also had meaning to me because, that's kind of who I am. I want to see problems, solve problems, lift communities up, lift people up. A lot of the pro bono work I did was for law enforcement officers that had problems that I thought were completely unfair. So I threw myself into the public domain and decided to run for mayor because having worked adjacent to politics for 23 years, no one knows better than me that the system's broken. It's just broken. The quality of the candidates that we're getting is atrocious. I mean, this is what we deserve as New Yorkers. They're the greatest city in the world. And we have Bill de Blasio, who broke every promise that he made other than pre-K, which was a great program. And Eric Adams, who, I had my circumspection about him because I was aware of corruption in Borough Hall. But I thought he would clean himself off and surround himself with really smart people and lead us out of the de Blasio years where little was done, in my view, for disadvantaged communities or the business community. And if you have significant problems, you're not going to solve them by vilifying Wall Street, vilifying the business community and the real estate community. You got to work with them. So in any event, I thought he would at least be a centrist that would lead the city, and we got bad policy and corruption. So at that point in October, I did something I never contemplated doing in my life. I'm almost 59 years old, just a week and a half from now, I'll be 59. Never run for office before. And, I'm a Teddy Roosevelt fan, right? I'm going in the arena, and I'm going to give people a choice. I'm going to run a campaign that people can be proud of, because I'm trying to change. You said this before, John, and I totally agree with you. We need long form discussion, right? We have to get away from these stupid sound bites where people are like, well, your position on this issue or that issue, I hate that. Well, listen, some people are going to like my policies. Some people aren't going to like my policies, but I guarantee you there are policies in there that are well thought through and that will do the most good for the most people. And Eric, to your point, man, I don't really, people say, well, are you on the left or are you right? I was like, I'm kind of a libertarian, man. I really, I didn't want my father in my grill. I don't want the government in my grill for sure. They can barely run the city. I don't want them telling me how to live my life. And I imagine most people want the government to do a really excellent job. And how many times have we heard this in leadership? Holding yourself to a standard of excellence, holding yourself to a standard of reliability, right? Those are the things, those are the core values that I have as a person. And you can listen, you go anywhere you want, talk to anyone you want, people that like me, people that hate me. What they're going to say is he works like a dog and he keeps his word. If that's my legacy after I'm mayor, that's good enough for me. So I'm sorry if that was a very long introduction, but I appreciate giving it.
No, I was actually thinking when you have an opportunity, obviously this is live, you have to watch it yourself, because I'm listening. I said, there's a lot of great information here. And that's what's so fascinating about these long form podcasts in comparison to these short form snippets that you get, is you actually get someone's personality. It gets exposed. You can only hide it for so much with these short form interviews. But when it comes to long form podcasts, you actually get to see who someone is. I think that, we say zebras don't change their stripes, but you start to see who the stripes are, right? So you can only hide it for so much. You provide a lot of great information here. I think it's really interesting how you started out your life with public service, almost a decade with the Eastern District. And I think it's kind of ironic also that you worked in the Eastern District and Eric Adams and his administration is being investigated by the Eastern and Southern District. So there's a lot of irony there. And now it's come full circle for you. You worked in public service. I did read in your bio that you transitioned into private sector, working in white collar fraud, and now you're back into public service. And I think it's great. It comes full circle. And what's interesting about that, you also talk about law enforcement, talk about stoicism. I take pride in leadership. I was honor grad officer cadet school in the Marine Corps, and you read a lot about stoicism, and that's why I see the upper echelon of the police department. They lack stoicism. It's disappointing to me, and it has to be a standard set to have excellence, especially in any organization, especially in the police department.
Wait, can I stop you 1 second? Two other Stoics, Kobe Bryant, Wayne Gretzky, right?
Yes.
I don't know if Tom Brady is, but he has to at least be Stoic adjacent. I mean, this is like, it's life-changing stuff. So I give a lot of credit.
What about talking about sports? It's going to need a couple of days on there. I love it. This is Look, you talk about law enforcement, which is great. We're big supporters of law enforcement. Obviously, we're both retired lieutenants. We don't talk about the stuff that the messaging that we put out there because we're bitter. We do it because we love the police department. So I'm a firm advocate for intrusive police work. I believe that's the bedrock and foundation for policing. So ultimately, I would like to know your stance on qualified immunity, because for me, in order to be effective as a police officer, especially in New York City, to do intrusive police work, we need qualified immunity. What is your stance on qualified immunity if you become the mayor of New York City?
I support it 100%. I supported it as now let's make sure that all the listeners are dialed into what we're talking about when we're talking about qualified immunity. And this is not a concept that was made for the NYPD or for any specific agency. This goes back in some form or fashion to our foundation, which is if you're going to put people in harm's way, and you're asking people to make choices in their life and for their family to do a job for public service, whether you're sitting at a desk in the Department of Parks, or you're a man or woman in blue out on the front lines, or you're a firefighter, stuff's going to happen. Life's messy. There's going to be things that are there are going to be some things that are done that are intentional. There are going to be some things that are done that are reckless. There are going to be some things that are done that are accidental, and there are going to be some things that are done that actually don't reflect what the facts of what actually happened. There's a whole range of conduct, and the qualified immunity doctrine was intended to protect people from lawsuits for part of that range, not the entire range. It's not like a get out of suit free card. It's intended to protect those actors who are doing a job for the government and act with a standard of reasonableness. And it's a broad range, right? It goes from protecting people from lawsuits for things that really didn't happen at all the way through people that used their best judgment in the circumstances, even if the circumstances got out of control. So, there are a number of what I will call, virtue signaling changes to the law, and whether it's people calling for the erosion of qualified immunity, or some of the bail reform laws, some of the discovery laws, especially when it comes to criminal prosecutions that put victims and witnesses at risk. I'm never going to be in favor of that. I don't care how many left-leaning people say, well, you're just like Giuliani. Well, no, I'm not. I actually think that I've got more on the ball than him, even when he was mayor. And my positions are more nuanced, and I can talk about them in great detail because they're based on research and experience. But at the end of the day, we need to do, and this is one of the main reasons I wanted to come on your podcast, right? I know who your listeners are, and I respect them. And they're people that might leave New York City, and they're good officers. Many of them, the overwhelming majority, are amazing officers, and they put their lives on the line every single day. And what do they get? They get left-leaning, virtue signaling people that want to do to them what those same people say. Never do this to a disadvantaged community. Never judge everyone by what the bad acts of one or two people. But that bias, that bigotry, is permitted and actually in ways encouraged in our politics. And it's just wrong. It's wrong when we do it to people of color. It's wrong when we do it to the police, period, full stop. So in any event, I'm sorry, I'm going to start waxing poetic. Let me shut up there and let you guys do your thing.
Yeah, so before we go any further, we got about 525 people on here right now in the live chat. We didn't set the rules of engagement going forward, so we're going to go from topic to topic. Right now, we're talking about NYPD. We're going to talk about crime. We're going to talk about police. We'll move on to the migrant crisis. So via Centaurus, we see your question, and we will get to that 100%, but we're not there yet. So, Jim, here's the question I have for you.
Hit me.
You obviously been paying close attention to the state of crime in New York City, subway crime in New York City, and the NYPD. What are you seeing? What do you think? What does Jim Walden's NYPD look like? What does Jim Walden's New York City look like as it relates to crime and policing?
Okay. So first of all, the vision of New York that I have, I won't be able to achieve on day one because the main problem is there aren't enough police officers. I mean, given what we've done to the police force and the way that we've torn them down and haven't supported them, and we haven't increased their pay to a level that's competitive, which is why 25%, if I understand the data, 25% of active officers are looking to leave New York City. So we haven't done right by the police, but there aren't enough police on the street right now. But the ideal of this situation is to put more police on the street and allow them to police more and to police better. And I don't think that bringing in the National Guard would be necessary if we hadn't followed the lead of our most left-leaning, what I will call extremist policies, and vilified the police. So on day one, though, I'm going to have to solve that problem. When I get there, I'm going to have to solve that problem, and I'm going to put some detail around this. But I'm trying to develop what, and I'm not making this up from whole cloth. There is a program that's similar to this, and there was a program that was similar to this. But I think that we need rapid response forces, and we need them en masse. And how we get them is going to be complicated. But we need to do them as an integrated whole, not with like the NYPD and then some fill-in Army people or some National Guards people. We need to do it through the NYPD, and we need to figure out the legal hurdles that we have to get over to allow them to take mentally ill people off the subways and off the streets ASAP. And if I have to go to court on day 2 and challenge the law that restricts us from doing that, then that's going to be job 1. Job 2 is we have to, and I don't want to get ahead of this, but we have to deal with the situation with the migrants. It's not fair to the migrants. It's not fair to us. You ran that clip about Zoran Mamdani's baby basket program, and I can talk about that, but that's not my point. My point is we have would-be mayors talking about those issues and not talking about Debrina, I'm going to mispronounce her name a little bit, but Karwam. I'm thinking about something to put out about this, because this woman had like a really special life, and she had struggles, and the city failed her, but she came from good stock. Her father was a union guy, worked at GM. There's a lot of the details of her story that are now lost. And when she died, a little bit of us died. And I don't want there to be another one like that on my watch. So we have to deal with the migrant situation, and we have to deal with it not by sticking them in luxury hotels, but by giving them a community. And when my housing plan comes out, this is going to be part of my housing plan. There's a much better solution that takes them out and allows us to separate basically the good from the bad. And when I say the bad, I mean people that filed false political asylum applications. I mean people that had criminal convictions in their countries that they didn't disclose. I mean people that have done violent things since they've been here. Those people, we've got to cooperate with the Trump administration, and we have to get them out. And then with the rest of the people, we have to support them more. And if we build modular apartment communities on open land and take all of the services that are being provided to them and co-locate those services there, that's the idea that I'm developing and I want to explore. Because all across the world, modular units are used in these situations. They are much less expensive than the way we're doing it. They don't put strains on existing infrastructure. Of course, I'm going to get people on the left that say, "Oh, you're building camps. You're trying to put them essentially in prisons." That's not true. Like, look beyond the politics that's driving your ignorance to what these communities actually look like when they are built by countries that we respect as human rights compliant. And these are actually great communities where there can be bespoke school programs so that you're not taking migrant kids and sticking them in public schools when they don't even speak English. You can provide more and better services for them and help them find a pathway to the American dream in a way that's much better than if you just stick them in a hotel, give them food vouchers, and then expect that they're going to be able to make it on their own. So I think I went off topic, but I do that sometimes. Sorry about that, guys.
No, outstanding. Give a lot of good information. I just want to say shout out to Seth Lowe, $20 coffee and donuts. Great comment. We're not going to answer it now, but Jim, help these cops get their jobs back with back pay and investigate these arbitrators and the nepotism in the NYPD, and also judges that are baseless towards cops and biased towards cops and misconduct cases. We'll definitely get into that. I know we're going to eventually segue into that. And also another shout out here to Jonathan Fredericks, $1.99. What's his views on congestion pricing? We'll get into all that. We don't want to get off topic here. I know what you're thinking, but since you mentioned the migrant crisis, Tren de Aragua is a $15 million organization throughout 8 countries in South America, really spread throughout this country, especially New York City. So if you're mayor of New York City, what's it going to look like as a sanctuary city? Will you have an executive order to push back on that? And will you have the NYPD work with their federal partners to combat a gang such as Tren de Aragua and these other military illegal age males?
Okay, so first of all, on that last point, 100% yes. So there's no ambiguity about that. But listen, the sanctuary city thing, I'm going to separate the ideal from the practicality, right? The ideal of a sanctuary city was something that I think, came from a good place. I mean, I've worked for immigrant rights groups during the course of my pro bono work. Like, one of the things that we did, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and ultimately the Supreme Court sided with us, was that we were deporting people for minor crimes that were being mischaracterized as serious felonies systematically across the Department of Justice during the Bush administration, and we put an end to that. And I was very proud of that. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form anti-migrant. Like, my parents, mostly my mom's side of the family, literally came here in the aftermath of the dislocation of World War II, and they found the American dream. And so I believe that we need to keep bringing great people from other countries here. But at the same time, the sanctuary city ideal was not meant for something like this. And the problem with all of these laws is that there's no, people go in with an ideology and don't actually think through the details of, well, what happens if X? Well, if X happens and buses start coming from Texas and dumping huge quantities of migrants, none of whom we know, none of whom have been vetted. We have no idea what healthcare needs they have, no idea what education or employment they have, what their language skills are. We don't even have a list of who's on the bus. If that happens, we have to be able to react in real time without necessarily declaring a state of emergency. And then, even if you declare a state of emergency, that doesn't mean that you can get around the laws. So this is why it drives me crazy when, the extreme left or the extreme right dictates, what the law should be, and they don't put in optionality. Short answer: reform. We have to reform the sanctuary law, whatever it's called, whatever it looks like. Obviously, I'm in favor of protecting migrants that are here legitimately and, want to live with American values and integrate into our society. I support that. And if they have to apply for benefits, I don't want them to be arrested and the mom taken away from her kids because she applied for benefits. So I'm down with that. What I'm not down for is people that say, well, we're not going to cooperate with ICE no matter what the circumstances are. I think that that's just stupid policy. Like, I don't know if this is true, but after the guy that immolated the woman on the subway, there was an article in one of the papers. I haven't had a chance to fact check it. I can't remember if it was the Daily News or the Post, where someone from the city was quoted saying that they weren't going to cooperate with ICE with respect to this guy. Now, that's kind of a little bit of a false issue, because right now there's nothing ICE can do. The guy should be prosecuted and put in jail for the rest of his life. And so, he's not, we're stuck with the guy, but he needs to be in jail. And so he's going to go through his proceeding. But the idea that a city official would say, in this circumstance, we can't cooperate with ICE, is just bad policy. So I would reform, at a minimum, I'd reform the sanctuary laws. Again, sorry if my answers are too long.
No, it's all right. It's all right. So listen, I'm going to bring us back a minute on NYPD, city workers, on stuff like that. Right now in the NYPD, sergeants particularly, their contract was never settled. I personally believe it was the fault of the unions. The union will tell you something different. But so they never settled their contract. And right now, how it is cops, top pay cops, are actually making more money than sergeants. So obviously sergeants are rank up, your responsibilities grow tremendously. The Sergeants Benevolent Association motto is the toughest job in the world. I will affirm that. I believe that was the hardest job that I ever had in the NYPD. I don't believe anything on this earth could mirror being an NYPD sergeant. So I'm not shortchanging that motto whatsoever. Would you be willing to work with the SBA to write this to make sure that you're going into a position of leadership and you're actually going to make more money than the rank you came from. So I mean, it's in law, it's in city charter that this is supposed to be that way, that sergeant's supposed to make whatever X percentage more than a cop, X percentage more than a detective. Second grade detectives makes the same amount of money as sergeants, but currently that is not the case. So you have sergeants that are working the better part of 4 years, and the people that they're supervising and the responsibility they have is much greater, yet they're not making that same money.
Okay, so can I start with a fun fact?
Sure.
So my grandfather was in the Army during World War II, and before he was actually deployed, they made him a drill sergeant, and he said it was the toughest job he's ever had in his life. I hats off to the sergeants. I'm well aware, having worked with the NYPD for so long, how hard that job can be. But I don't know the specific issues that held up the sergeant's contract, so I can't really comment on that specifically. But what I can comment on generally is this, and I've said this in writing, so I'm not saying to you something that I haven't said publicly before. I don't want NYPD to have to feel like when they come to me, they have to come on bended knee. Like, again, people that agree with me, great. People disagree with me, that's good too. I actually like creative disagreement. I actually think it results in better policy. But I'm not saying what I'm saying to get an endorsement, but there was a conversation about an endorsement from one of the unions, and I was like, listen, you don't need to talk to me about what you want or what you need. I understand. I'm going, when I'm mayor, right? Law enforcement is not going to have to come to me on bended knee, period. Right? Like the idea that there's an unresolved contract, to me, every single day that would bother me, like just as a person, right? That there's sergeants who don't have a contract who are working for the city. That is just unfair. So yes, the answer is I would want to work with all of the law enforcement groups. And by the way, every single group that represents public service employees. Does that mean I'm going to be a chump and I'm going to just give away city money and I'm not going to be fiscally responsible and there's going to be no compromises? No, of course not. But at the end of the day, our public servants, the way in which they are undermined and led from compromised grifters, in my view. I'm not necessarily talking about the NYPD historically, but the top echelon right now. I think that it's fair to say that there was a collection of them that really were perverted grifters who created a system of oppression for women. But this kind of stuff happens in other agencies as well. The mayor should be there for the rank and file first and foremost, and the rank and file includes officers and detectives. It includes sergeants. It includes everyone that's actually working the job, as opposed to people that are administering, people that are purporting to lead. So I definitely want to be the mayor for the rank and file of every agency, and particularly for NYPD, FDNY, the EMS, the people that are really in harm's way every single day. And I got to say, just one closing comment on that. This frustrates the hell out of me, right? Every time something bad happens, front page of the paper, right? If the media followed detectives and officers around, and they were able to do it every day, what they would see is acts of bravery every minute of every day, citywide. And I wish that was covered more, because I got to see that. I had the privilege of seeing that for 9 years. Like, some of the people that I worked with were just legendary. They became legendary. I mean, John Cipriano was from the DEA, but he was, he worked with the cops so incredibly well during the task force years that we were together. And the guy actually, after he retired, he still wanted to give back. So he sat on the CCRB to try to make sure that there was a balanced perspective, which I really, really thought was for a guy that was a fighter and one of the most creative investigators I've ever worked with. I thought that said a lot about him. So in any event, I'm sorry I'm rambling a bit, but those are my views.
You're not rambling at all. This is your opportunity to put out your platform, your policies, and for us to get to know you. So with that being said, we're talking about the NYPD, so I might as well segue into this. This is where I'm impressed. You put pen to paper. right? You had a conversation with John. John's very passionate about the mandate. He's been a catalyst when it comes to not forcing and having coercion and basically violating the law. That's what this ultimately comes down to. So with that being said, according to the NYPD, their numbers right now supposedly are around 33,000. I don't believe that manpower numbers. I believe that's a complete lie. But according to the NYPD, the numbers are 33,000. Marlon Bethel, who's a dear friend to us, part of the Finest Unfiltered family, was wrongfully terminated from the police department for not complying with the mandate. So you did put pen to paper. And according to Marlon, about 7% of the force was lost because of this mandate. So
Wait, hold on. 7%?
7%, according to Marlon.
7% of tier 2.
Of tier 2.
7% of tier 2.
Of tier 2.
Which is our pension tier.
That's still, I mean, that's still,
which is a high number.
Still a lot of people.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people.
Right. So if we just said 7%, and I'm glad you mentioned that. If we just said 7% of 33,000, that's 2,310. So arguably, I would say about half the job is still tier 2 and about half the job is tier 3. So if we just divide that in half, that's very close to the numbers right now, right? With this mass exodus and this recruitment problem where Jessica Tisch promised 1,600 new police officers. And it takes about 30 candidates to actually peruse to get to about 1,600. So we've done the numbers. We've done some math with it. And substantially to bring back these NYPD employees and to give them back pay would be far less than getting 1,600 new recruits. So I did read in your memorandum that you talk about sincere medical reasons, sincere personal reasons, and religious reasons. I'm just curious, why did you put that verbiage in there? Why not just say anyone that was affected by it? I know it's a memorandum at this point, but was there any thought into that verbiage? Is there going to be, who determines if it's sincere or not?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. These are good questions. And by the way, like I like this is not a tough question, but I like tough questions. If you guys are screening them, don't let them say let them ask what they want to ask. But I mean, again, coming from the position, I come to the position of every problem with the humility that I don't have to pretend that I know a lot about the subject, because when people do that, then you can't trust them. Right. So when I came to this issue, I started reading and I read a lot, and I always try to read both sides, right? To the extent that there's sides to an issue, I try to figure out, if this goes to like, I don't know if you saw the movie The Negotiator with Kevin Spacey, but there was this line where he's like, I try to understand, both sides and come up with my own, my own view. What I read was that there were, and this is not specific to NYPD, but there were people that basically gamed the system, who actually took the vaccine and then claimed that they couldn't take the vaccine or wouldn't take the vaccine. I have no idea if that's true. I have no idea if that's one person or 10 people or 30,000 people citywide. I have no idea. So, but again, for the same reason that the sanctuary city laws were drafted in such a strict way that it doesn't give you optionality, I have a tendency to be nuanced around those things to give myself flexibility. To me, the important part is who makes that decision. And I'm still kind of wrestling with that issue, to tell you the truth. I'm not sure. But I was thinking about having a designated group of people that were brought back, right? People that were brought back into public service to basically be a small panel of people that would do the screening on that issue. Because I thought if there's people that are, super empathetic and are going to give, kind of a wide berth to sincerity, right? Sincerity to me is really another way of saying, did you actually take the virus or not, right? If you claim that you couldn't take the vaccine, I mean, not the virus, the vaccine. If you claim you couldn't take the virus, the vaccine for reasons of religion or personal choice, et cetera, but you actually did take it, then I'm sorry, I think I'm confusing the issue a little bit. In any event, a panel of people that were brought back from having been fired is the current idea that I have for how to just determine sincerity.
So Jim, just so we're clear, nobody has been brought back. Nobody's been reinstated. There have been.
No. When I'm mayor, I'm going to reinstate them. And right, so I'm going to reinstate the people that I'm confident qualify, and to the extent that then to the extent that there is then a process where people say, wait, some of these people gamed the system, some of these people committed submitted fraudulent paperwork, then there will be a process afterwards to review and then take actions if it turns out that that someone gamed the system. That was the idea behind leaving that flexibility in the policy.
So I just want to give you two examples, right?
Okay.
Two examples. So our good friend Marlon Bethel, 16-year intelligence detective, black man, legal immigrant to this country, right? So here's Marlon Bethel's situation. Marlon Bethel says that he has zero issue with taking the FDA approved shot. He has zero issue with it. However, the NYPD through FOIA records had never had the approved version, which is the comorbidity version. So he said, I would choose to wait. Marlon Bethel was terminated from the NYPD. His termination is non-disciplinary. He was never awarded due process. He's received zero criminal charges from the NYPD. He received zero administrative charges from the NYPD. Completely goes against how you would traditionally fire a cop. They would be charged with something. They would go to the trial room. Marlon Bethel never received any of that stuff. Now, unlike myself, and I'll give you the second example after this, Marlon Bethel was terminated. Under your policy, does someone like Marlon Bethel, he never submitted a religious exemption. He never submitted a medical exemption. He had a objection to he had an objection. He said, I understand that the shot is FDA approved. I just want the FDA approved version. And he was terminated without ever receiving due process.
Mm-hmm. So I can't, obviously, John, I can't answer a specific question on a specific case, but let me just kind of be clear, because I think that in my last answer, I wasn't as clear as I needed to be. So there, let's just say, how many people system wide, not just NYPD, do we believe got fired under the mandate? Right.
I mean, honestly, and I'm going to follow this up with your second question. Will your city's corporation counsel, they be forthcoming with FOIA requests and discovery? Because what we're seeing right now in court is that we're not being given privy to documents, to emails, to training material, and every FOIA request is being blocked and the discovery is being blocked. And the fact that this whole system was created, by the way, by Jessica Tisch and Salesforce, was put in place to be a central storage location for all of this information, yet New York City isn't providing that data. So I could speculate what that number is, but it's a speculation because the city of New York is not forthcoming with that.
Okay, so I actually thought you guys had a precise number, but I know that there's no precise number to be given. And you just asked me a question, and I want to answer that question directly. But let me just be clear about this, right? There are some number of people, and if we don't have the specific number, there are some number of people that were fired, right? And so those people, right, when I'm mayor, I'm going to sign an order saying I'm bringing them back, right? Now we bring them back. Now, do they get back pay? When do they get back pay? What are the details? I still have to work that out. But I was trying to leave myself room, and this is the way I believe policy should be made, to look at those cases where there is some indication somewhere that I am not currently aware of that someone somehow, some way in that whole process of dealing with COVID did something that was fraudulent or deceptive or gamed the system. So there'll be a process. And maybe there'll be none. Maybe there'll be 2% of the people. Maybe I don't know how the process is going to work. But eventually, however many of those cases come before whatever board I set up, I want the people that make the decisions to be people that were adversely affected, because I think that there will certainly be representation from people that weren't adversely affected, so that there is independence and a voice of neutrality. But there'll be some process to suss those out. So let's just say hypothetically that there are 5 people that the board said, listen, we've looked at 100 cases, and there are really only 5 cases that we believe that are in the category of they did something wrong. then those 5 people are then relieved of duty. They don't get back pay, and everybody else will be awarded back pay with a system that I have not yet worked out for when that happens and how that happens. And it would be irresponsible for me to commit to say it's going to happen this way or that way. The complication for me is what you now referred to, which is all the litigation. I'm not familiar with all the litigation. So there's got to be a process there to kind of work out the litigation as well. So there are some people that sued, some people that didn't. And to the extent that people sued, what are they suing for? And is there a way to compromise with them? And I think I've been very clear about this, that once I get there and I get my arms around the situation, I'm going to try to do this during the campaign because I've already gotten requests for more specificity. I will be as specific as I can be once I really understand the problem. And I'm not going to be forced to be specific just to please people. So I want good policy. I understand at a fairly high level, as that we all do at this point, what the scope is, what the individual variation is between cases. But I wanted to just be clear that I thought that this was an injustice. I wanted to cure it. I intend to bring those people, everyone, back. And there will be a process to suss out if there's anyone that should be excluded. But except for people where there was due process and a finding that they did something wrong, when that information comes to this board of people, that the board will be made up of people that were adversely impacted by the injustice in the first place. Everyone else is going to get back pay according to some program that I have not yet studied and I have not yet designed. So was that super clear?
So what question I have is like, it's super clear that you don't want to make a solid statement because you're not aware of everything, but you're willing to bring these people back. You believe that it's an injustice. You can't dictate policy because you don't fully understand it. I don't expect you to, in all fairness. I've been immersed in this for 3 years. I don't think there's maybe 1 or 2 other people out here who could converse with me on this topic. But, all in all I think my concern and the majority concern is that there were various situations. And what we're saying is New York City violated our contracts when it relates to how discipline's administered. As particularly when you look at a person like Marlon Bethel. And then on top of that, the NYPD and New York City, because it wasn't just the NYPD agency, it came down from DCAS. There was a policy that came down from DCAS that New York City is not being forthcoming with. They're not giving us this training. Our equity and inclusion offices throughout all of our agencies aren't being forthcoming. Thus, I'll more than happy to walk you through some testimonies, some dispositions, show you some evidence that has came out and some testimony that's came out. But all in all, when we look at New York State human rights law and how the exemption process was played out, there were a lot of people that were forced from their careers. My good friend Mark Robinson, like myself, had submitted a religious exemption. I don't know the details of his religious exemption. I could tell you what mine was. Mine was that I had the antibodies, that the NYPD doctors told me not to take the shot when I came back to work after coming down with COVID pneumonia and almost going out of the picture. They told me don't because they would expect an adverse side effect. So after Bill de Blasio puts in his mandate and Eric Adams now states he will enforce it, I believe you're asking me to do something that goes against my conscience. You're asking me to violate my conscience, which is an ultimate sin. I had no qualms about any pharmaceutical medicine. I wasn't afraid of anything, but I know that I don't need that. And you're telling me that I need it. And you're asking me to deny what I believe to be true, which is ultimately asking me to violate my conscience.
Wait, the you not being me, the you being the administration.
You, yeah, not you. The
Yeah. Just make
city of New York. The city of New York.
Yeah,
not you. So like that's asking me to violate my conscience, which ultimately is sin, which ultimately damns me here on earth and then therefore in the afterlife. So when I asked for that religious accommodation, And by the way, DCAS had deemed that an approved accommodation, the only approved accommodation that there was in New York City, the only approved accommodation was to allow me to mask and test. That's an approved accommodation that didn't cause an undue hardship to New York City.
But listen,
The other portion of that is that there were other options that did cause an undue hardship to New York City, like allowing you to work in a command that wasn't public facing, right? So for me, I was given, here's my options: termination or take the shot. I'm like, I'm not taking termination after 18 years. I have 2 children. So I retire. I'm told constantly, you left on your own. I'm like, no, I was constructively terminated. I was forced into making a decision I didn't want to. I have the records proving that New York City said that my request wasn't religious in nature. But according to New York State human rights law, nobody dictates that.
Wait, but John, first of all, I'm going to say the same thing that I said about Marlon's case, which is I'm not commenting on your case specifically because I hear you. I believe what you say. It sounds like a sincere reason to me, but I think maybe there's something that's being lost in translation here, right? There are people in the world, right, that take certain actions, and maybe some of those actions are authentic, and maybe some they're not. But if nobody has accused them, nobody's going to review the conduct, right? So what I'm talking about is a panel that is there in case somebody comes to them with evidence saying, hey, John Doe, I'm aware that John Doe submitted false paperwork in connection with the COVID mandate. I am aware that there was fraud. Okay, so someone has now come to this panel. John Doe's conduct is now going to be investigated, and that'll be what it'll be, and the panel will decide. There'll be a process set up that someone will say, okay, these workers have now been brought back. If anyone has information suggesting fraud, then send it to us because here's our website. So some number of cases will come to them, right? But if the cases don't come to them, if no one's making an accusation of fraud, then, and I assume, listen, this is being recorded, so this is what I intend to do, right? Then the cases won't be reviewed by that panel. So again, I wanted to build in flexibility based on what I read, which is that there are some number of people in circumstances that I don't understand that committed some sort of fraud or misconduct in connection with the COVID situation. So I thought about it and I tried to think of words to use that were broad enough that would give flexibility for some sort of review process for those people that however many there were that gamed the system. That was all those words were intended to do. Does that make sense?
You're losing me on the fraud thing. I'm not going to lie. You're completely losing me on the fraud. We've seen people that actually lied and submitted fraudulent documents, and they're still working. They're still cops today. People like Marlon Beto, who had integrity, didn't. Here's my only question. I think we need to get off the topic because we're spending way too long on it. Here's my only question. Will there be a process in place for my case, for Marlon's case, for Mark Robinson's case to be reviewed to see that everything that happened in those either religious accommodation requests, those medical accommodation requests, or people will there be a process in your administration to get these people back to work?
So the answer is yes, but let me just unpack this a little bit, right? So let's just take Marlon. I don't know Marlon at all. So on day one, Marlon comes back to work, right? There'll be some period of time where this process will take place, where this group will review cases that come to them, and they will then decide. Now, all the cases that come to them are decided, their work is done, it's closed. Then we will come up with however we're going to deal with the back pay issue. Then we'll give the back pay issue, however it's going to be administered, to everyone that isn't excluded by that process. Now, some of those people still have lawsuits, right? So, and they claim damages beyond back pay. And what I've said is that the Corp Council is going to review those cases expeditiously and try and settle them. So that's all in my policy. That's what I plan to do. Now, you asked a separate question, which is there going to be discovery? Is there going to be FOIL? Or are they going to block the litigations? I can't answer that question right now because there's going to be a decision made during that review process. There are going to be some cases that have merit and some cases that don't have merit. And with respect to either one of those cases, my administration is not going to play the game that Corp Counsel plays, which is hide the ball during discovery, right? I didn't like it as a litigant. I don't like it now. I won't like it as mayor. And if there are cases that are meritorious cases, we should be settling them as quickly as possible in a way that that also protects the public fisc. Did I answer all the questions?
Yeah, I think your answers are fair at this point. You know, obviously this is a very in-depth subject, especially for us being affected by it. You know, as far as NYPD employees and of course New York City civil service workers. I just want to clarify at this point. For me, when you put pen to paper, it appeared to be more of as a memorandum than an actual policy as a precursor to it. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean it's a policy statement during a campaign. That is then, I mean, what I wanted people to do is to understand what the ideas were and what the purpose was. But all of those details are going to have to be worked out. I mean, the difference between me and other candidates is I'm willing to say it in writing and be held accountable for it. Now, people are skeptical, and they should be, right? Especially for people in communities that have been screwed over by the system. Like, I understand skepticism, but what I'm not going to do is kind of commit myself to policies that are inflexible that end up screwing people over or screwing the public trust over before I understand the issue fully.
No, I understand. I think at this point it's just that this has been a subject that has been dragged through the mud, and I think at this point, I think people are tired of tap dancing. They just want a straight answer that will they be brought back to work or not. And the bottom line is, you know, I understand you're talking about this. What's that?
Yes.
Right. And, you know, there's one more portion. I know we want to segue into other stuff, but you did talk about the merits of a lawsuit. So who determines the merits of that lawsuit? Because, and as John said, no one was brought back to work. They had an opportunity to reapply. And then if they reapplied, they had to basically waive their rights. So at this point, we're talking about someone
By the way,
back.
that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. By the way, that's ridiculous. My program will bring people back, give them back pay as long as they're not in this process, right? And leave their rights to litigate alone.
But if they are in this process, would they have the option of dropping that lawsuit and going back into that process?
Wait, I'm sorry. Ask the question again, John. I didn't understand that.
No, because Eric's bringing up the lawsuits, right? You're
Yeah.
saying you'll have the merits of the lawsuit. If they are in the process of the lawsuit, does that exclude them from being brought back?
That was actually going to be my question.
So let me be super clear about this, because what I don't want is anyone thinking I'm not being clear about this. We got two things. We've got the being brought back and getting back pay, and we've got the litigation. Those things, from my mind, are separate, right? People are brought back. The overwhelming majority, I have no idea whether it's 99% or 95%, are going to get back pay. The only people that aren't going to get back pay and are then going to get removed from service is if there are people that committed fraud in connection with the COVID mandate issue. You're saying that there was none. I can't really remember the circumstances, but the reason I wrote those words is because I read things where people had examples of fraudulent behavior. I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah, and they're working right now. They're police officers with a badge and a gun.
All right.
Good job.
And they're firemen and they're EMS workers.
Okay. But if that's the only fraud that happened, then there's, with respect to the victimized community, then this process will be really quick because there won't be anyone brought up in this process.
Well,
but,
other than the fraud that we've seen throughout the religious exemption process, which I'll show you, I'll clearly show you through deposition.
Well, but hold on. But that process of being brought back and back pay is separate from the litigations. I'm not going to make people waive their rights to be brought back, right? I just don't believe in that. I don't believe that when we have parents that want IEPs for their children, that they have to sign some sort of waiver. We read about that 2 weeks ago, or else or their kids not going to, their special needs kids not going to get the education that he or she needs. So I'm not going to make public service employees waive their rights in order to come back and get back pay. Now, you asked a question about how the litigations are going to be evaluated, and that's a case-by-case basis. If there are valid litigations, I've been as clear as I can. I want those settled. I want them settled on fair terms. I'm not going to be, tell my corp counsel, hey, just roll over on people and spend as much money as you want, obviously. But if the cases have merit, they should be settled. If the cases clearly don't have merit, they should be fought, but they should be fought fairly, not by blocking discovery and slow walking the case. And then there's going to be this group of cases in the middle that it's not clear if they're, and it's going to have to go through the discovery process in order to sort that out. And I'm just going to let that process go forward. So I'm going to try to deal with things with clarity, with purpose, and that's the way that I devised this policy.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate what you're saying, and I get the specifics of it. But I think what people ultimately want to hear is, hey, this was illegal. This mandate was illegal, and let's just make this wrong into a right. I think that's what they want to hear. I mean, there's, is there potential fraud? Yes, but I think it's very minimal. I think the overwhelming majority were just completely violated. The laws were violated. And, I know you don't want to get to the specifics of it, but when we talk about Marlon Bethel, that's always been my argument. We talk about the religious accommodations. We talk about medical. But what about the other categories? Just, hey, I just don't want it. I just don't want it. I mean, you've been working for the police department.
But Eric, that's personal choice, and I value personal choice.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, 100%. But you guys just have to understand, whether it's this or the sanctuary city issue, I deal with them in my brain the same way, which is you may be right. There is no fraud, or that there's, it's a tiny, tiny percentage of people. I don't know at this point. But I'm not going to do the same thing with my program that was done during the sanctuary city laws and put myself in a straitjacket just because it's, it'll make people happy. It'll make some people happier now. I'm not here to make people happy now. I'm here to develop smart policies, and smart policies have flexibility. And if people want to see that skeptically and they're like, oh, he's a tap dancing lawyer, whatever, they have the right to say whatever they want. But intellectually, I am a nuanced person. I want there to be flexibility. But if people can't see past that one small part of the program and see overall, I want to bring people back. I want to give people fair pay. I want to be the mayor that says, I'm sorry for this, and this was a violation of the law, and it was a violation of your right of choice, and it was a violation of your religious principles for those people that did this for religious reasons. I'm saying that. Right. So there's no tap dancing around that part.
Absolutely. And you deserve a lot of credit for that, by the way,
That's
because
okay.
you're the only politician that even brought it up, that even was willing to talk about it.
I'm not a politician. That's the point, my friend.
You're running, my friend. You're running. But you're the only person that has brought it up to date. You deserve a lot of credit. Listen, this conversation needs to continue to further. I agree with that. I'm telling you right now, I give you big props for even coming on here and having this conversation about it. Are we going to make everyone happy with this? No, because it's a very heated conversation where there's people's finances and lives and things. But I think we spent a lot of time on it, and we have spoken that we will speak about this in the future. And I appreciate you for that. While we're on the topic of NYPD workers, let's talk about workers, right? There's a couple of pressing issues in New York City around workers. One is EMS pay, right? EMS is looking for pay parity. I personally think that EMS is one of the hardest professions in New York City, and I think they have been treated horribly when it comes to pay. So that's one. Two, retiree health care. Could you let everyone know how you feel about that as well? Retiree and where you stood with Miriam Pizzatola and New York City Retirees Union. And then the third question, because it relates to workers, congestion pricing. We could go back and we could ask again, but those are my questions. EMS pay parity, New York City retirees, healthcare, congestion pricing.
Yeah, I'm just writing them down so I just make sure I don't lose track. Okay, EMS pay parity. I'm going to say two things. Number one, I agree with you 100% that EMS has not been seen the way that it should be. And I agree 100% based on what I've done before, that what I've researched so far, that they are underpaid, right? And that I think that they should be paid more. The pay parity issue, it would be the easiest thing for me to say, hey, I really would, want to please EMS workers. I can't comment on the pay parity because I don't understand the fiscal consequences of it. And I just need to understand that before. It sounds like a good in principle, but I just can't commit to it without doing more diligence. But what I can say is I already see that there's a pay problem for EMS. I see it, so people understand. Like you don't have to persuade me of that. But whether it's parity or not, what's the elephant in the room? The elephant in the room is that parity with whom? If it's pay parity with the firefighters, they're going to feel as though they should get paid more. If it's pay parity with the police, they're going to feel like they should be paid more. I got to say that kind of stuff is going to have zero traction with me, right? I'm not going to take a position for A because it pisses off B, right? I'm just not going to do that. So I just think that that's a way you get into bad politics and bad policies. So I will definitely agree that EMS needs to be treated better. And then part of that better treatment is more money, whether it's parity or something else. I can't say. If you don't have a question, I'll move on to retirees. Okay, so retirees, super simple, right? My law firm's been fighting this fight for, I don't know if it's 2 years now. We've won 11 judgments in a row. It's a partner of mine named Jake Gardner, firefighter himself, was a firefighter himself, now a lawyer, cared very deeply about this issue. He was actually a senior associate at the time. Or maybe he was a young partner. I can't even remember now. But my view when he came to me about the case was this is absolutely 100% what we should be doing. And so we fought. Marianne is a total champion. Marianne Pizzatola, if everyone doesn't know her, you should know her. She's a force of nature. And we've become very close. And I really rely on her judgment because way beyond all the things that she knows about, she just has a really good judgment on other issues that you might not even know that she has an opinion on. So my position with them is super clear, and it's the same position whether you're retired or not retired. And this is the part that actually makes me sad. It makes me sad that the people that are representing current public employees want to throw retired public employees under the bus. And I don't blame them for that, but I think it's a false choice. Right. I think that if you have someone that's creative, that actually values all public servants, whether they're on the job or they're off the job, that there's ways to find giving them what they need without pitting them against each other. And so to me, that is a very sad situation that I want to rectify. But what I'm going to be super clear about is on the benefits issue, I'm going to give them what they paid, what they've earned. I'm going to give them what was promised. And there's no two ways about it. It was one of the first things I put in writing. They're not going to be forced onto a program that is different than the one they bargained for. That's number two. On congestion pricing, I'm just forecasting this for you right now. I'm going to get a huge amount of skepticism for what I'm going to say, right? I don't know whether or not congestion pricing is at its core a good policy or a bad policy economically or in terms of driving behaviors. What I believe about congestion pricing is that this policy is terrible. It's terrible for so many reasons, and I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. But my main problem with this policy is it's regressive, number one. Number two, the exemptions are not clear, and public service employees don't have an exemption, and they should. People that live in the zone don't have an exemption. And so if they're reverse commuting, they're paying the congestion tax. And there was no planning. So you're going to take drivers and force them onto unsafe subways. You're going to have drivers that are going to drive no matter what. You've got no place for them to go. It's going to create congestion out of the zone, including in the outer boroughs. And we consistently have mayors that are too Manhattan-centric, and buses that don't run on time, et cetera, et cetera. And more fundamentally, it cuts against my libertarian streak, which is listen, I believe in lower carbon. I believe that less congestion is a good thing. I don't believe in this new culture war that people on the fringe left have started with, like drivers versus everyone else. I think that's stupid. So we're a city of people, we're a city of bikes. No, we're a city, we're a city of pedestrians, we're a city of bikes. No, we're a city of people, and some of those people drive cars, and some of those people don't drive cars. But I'm not going to be the mayor that installs bike lanes everywhere for the sake of bike lanes. So in any event, on congestion pricing, I want it to stop. People have said I don't have the legal authority to do that, and actually, I think that I do. I can at least prevent it because all of the MTA infrastructure, as I understand it, is on city-owned infrastructure. And if I say take it down, or I direct people to cover up the cameras, I believe I have the authority to do that. If I'm wrong, the lawyers will tell me that, and I'll go to court, right? But what I believe is that this is a bad program right now because it was poorly thought through. So everyone says it's the most well thought through policy in the history of policies. No, it wasn't. Right? People have studied congestion pricing for a long time, and there are various iterations of the program. This iteration of the program was poorly thought through because we didn't follow the example of Singapore. We didn't follow the example of London. We didn't prepare for safe alternatives for drivers before we forced it on them. And it was done with a meanness of, you're a driver, you're bad, we're going to punish you. Instead of, there are things that we would like you to try to choose, like taking transit a couple days a week, or driving an electric car into Manhattan instead of a carbon burning car, or whatever we would like drivers to do for the benefit of the greater good. To me, the better way to try to get people there is creating incentive structures and giving the people choice, as opposed to preaching to them that they've made wrong choices and we know better than they do. I think that's exactly what has gotten the Democratic Party, but it's also what's gotten the fringe of the Republican Party in trouble again and again and again. Make people's lives better. Stop preaching to them about whether their choices are good choices or bad choices, unless those choices are hurting other people. And here, carbon does hurt us all. And congestion does inconvenience everyone. So they're good to reduce, but let's do it in a way that gives drivers choice rather than forcing them to pay a tax that is regressive and does not have clearly articulated exemptions. How's that?
Listen, we appreciate your answers, and we want the long form answers because we want to get to know you, Jim. So I appreciate the fact that you're not trying to sell us a bag of goods, and you've been honest in a sense, saying, hey, I don't have all the specifics when we talked about the mandate or the specifics on any topic, but you want to have those conversations. So I hope at some point, especially when you're going to have this panel, that you would maybe have John or someone like Marlon that's really delved into this to be part of your panel or consult about the mandate. I would love to talk to you sometime and consult maybe about CCRB. Definitely a topic for another day. But ultimately, when we talk about congestion pricing, the conversation has been brought up that this is going to push more people to the subway. And there's been this perception versus reality campaign from the NYPD at this point, along with the new police commissioner, that it's perception control and trying to control the narrative and sell this idea that people should feel safe. But the numbers are there. We see complete gaslighting. They're lying about the numbers. So, Jim, you're a New York City mayor. We talk about stoicism. We talk about leadership. Who would be your police commissioner? You don't necessarily have to give me a name for the NYPD, but what type of person, characteristics, traits, and if there's any police commissioner in the past that you can use as a comparison, and if Jessica Tisch would be the police commissioner, would that be your police commissioner? Because right now we have a problem with leadership with the NYPD, especially under Eric Adams, and there's no vision. And ultimately, to have public safety, we need good leadership. So who would that be for you as mayor of New York City?
Okay, so you asked a bunch of questions there, so I'm going to try to get to them all. I wrote a policy about this. People can find it on my website. I think part of the problem with picking people is that there are considerations other than merit that come into these discussions, and I think that doesn't serve us well. Those things can be a consideration, but at the end of the day, we should pick the best candidate for the job because their lives at stake. And so I could easily pick the next police commissioner myself. I don't need anyone to tell me how to do it. But the reason that I'm doing it the way I'm doing it is to give people confidence that there are no political favors, there's no special considerations. There's a person that is picked based on merit and merit alone. And so I've convened a panel that includes Bob Ganley, who's a legend in the department. It includes Cy Vance. It includes Ray Kelly, that are going to pick the next police commissioner. And this is in writing, so I don't mean to exclude anyone. It's a really great group of people, including people from the Citizens Crime Commission, who I have a lot of respect for. People like Lauren Resnick. In any event, those are the people that are going to do a nationwide search, not just a search within New York City, although obviously candidates that have relevant experience here, are going to apply. I hope the current commissioner applies. I don't know where Bill Bratton is in his career, but he's certainly someone that I would think if he still has the desire, would have a seat at the table in terms of that process. But they'll look at candidates from outside of New York City as well. So that's the way I want to handle it. They're going to give me a list of 3 names, and I trust them to do the right thing. And I'm going to choose one of those names, and that's going to be the person that's going to be the police commissioner. And what I'm going to tell them is what criteria they use is up to them, right? I'm not there to dictate it to them. If every commissioner was chosen by every mayor in this way, we wouldn't have police commissioners or the head of buildings or whoever it is that wasn't vetted. There wasn't a lot of due diligence. They didn't have merit. People would have confidence in their government again. So the process was the part that was important to me. When I pick that name, I'm picking the person that has the greatest leadership ability and integrity, period, full stop, right? Leadership and integrity. Though that is the person that should be at the top of the pile. So I hope I answered your question.
I think you did. I appreciate it, that you already have, again, which I think that right now you're changing the course of the election is that you're willing to put pen to paper at this point. So that creates conversations and change the course, and having a 3-course panel is sort of like having an elected official. Unfortunately, we're not at the point of having an elected official. I think eventually we have to change that one day. But to have a 3-course panel, would you actually vet that person yourself, or you're giving them full authority to pick those 3, and then you actually just make your pick? But are you going to vet them yourself as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm creating a black box, right? I'm trying to do this in a very transparent way, and I fully expect that they'll collaborate with me, and that there are candidates during that process that I may express opinions on. But what I don't expect, and the reason that I picked people that have independence and a backbone, is that they're going to make a decision for themselves, right? There's going to be a process where there's going to be a vote. They're going to rank choice the candidates. There's going to be 3 people that scored the highest, and then I'm going to pick that one person. And so it's the process that gives people confidence that, A, we know what the hell we're doing, and we have not just one person picking people that they like, their buddies, they're, trying to repay political favors, whatever nonsense has gone into some of these picks. But then that the person should have the public's confidence because they came out of a process that vetted them fully, where the mayor weighed in, where there were experts in the field that were driving who were the key candidates. It's that kind of process, to me, as an egghead in some ways, that gives people confidence that we know what we're doing, which is we're stewards for the government. We're not really anything other than that. We're not there for our legacy. We're not there for our power. We're there as stewards for the public trust. So this process that I designed was intended with that in mind.
So Jim, you just put out a memo, I believe it was yesterday, and I think there were several articles written about it. You're suing X.
Oh, yes. Thanks for bringing it up.
Could you let us know about that?
Yeah. So some time ago, right when Musk was taking what was then Twitter back into his control, there were 2 Twitter employees that were working with the Saudi Arabian royal family. And I believe that we had stated evidence that was super clear that that higher level people at Twitter were aware of this, and they just didn't want to piss the Saudi royal family off because Saudi Arabia was considering banning Twitter the way that other Middle Eastern repressive regimes were doing. So in any event, these two Twitter employees disclosed confidential identities to the royal family. So you're tweeting as, Saudi critic, and nobody knows who the hell you are. Well, Twitter knew who you were, and it was giving the real identities to the royal family for those people that were in Saudi Arabia. And as a result of that, a whole bunch of people got rounded up. Some of them were tortured, all of them were arrested. And my client, the family that I was representing, the guy who was a Saudi aid worker, literally his whole life was about providing aid to people who needed it. He was sentenced to 20 years under some stupid terrorism statute because he had an account that poked fun at the royal family. So I called that out. I call out, I do not have a problem in any way, shape, or form calling out powerful people. At that time, it was Jack Dorsey. It wasn't Elon Musk that was responsible for this. And we stated evidence that Dorsey himself knew that this was happening. But in any event, a court ultimately threw that out. But it was when Musk came in, he was very unhappy about this. We wanted him to use his authority, not his authority, to work with the royal family. He had done that before, to work with the royal family and try and convince them to release our client, and he wouldn't do it. So now, a year and a half later, or whatever it is, I've got two accounts. They're both blue check marked. One's my campaign account, one's my personal account. It's very standard for candidates. I researched it. I did all the things that I needed to do to make sure that I was compliant. And then suddenly, as my personal account is surging in the mayor race, I think it increased like 400% over the course of 3 weeks. It gets permanently banned. Now, they don't do that to everyone. They send you a warning, or they ban you for a day and then they restore you. But for whatever happened, then they claimed it was quote unquote inauthentic accounts. Like, we're not using bot accounts. We were using two accounts and they both had blue check mark. So we tried to work with them, as is true with almost every lawsuit I've ever brought. I gave them ample opportunity to try to make it right. They didn't. So we sued them. And we believe it's retaliation for the lawsuit. That'll come out in discovery. We believe that there was a shadow ban placed on my campaign account because we've had many people come to us to say, when I repost your stuff, other people can't see it. And people have made follow-up calls with me.
I actually told you that yesterday too.
Yeah. This is a thing. And listen, I am who I am, right? We're going to take this all the way. I've got a very aggressive law firm. The Idala law firm is fantastic. And I've got them on my side, and I'm really grateful for that. And if they don't restore the account ASAP, then we're going to go through the discovery process, and we're going to call it out, and we're going to make the evidence that we find public so that people understand what's happening, and that'll go where it'll go. But I'm not going to sit around just because Elon Musk, I'm afraid of Elon Musk, to not bring a lawsuit to call out something that I think is just anti-democratic and wrong.
I love it. I think it's great. I mean, John and I were talking about this yesterday. Like, wow, look what's going on here. So no surprise with X. It's supposed to be the platform of freedom, but that's not the case at all. It's unfortunate. So, I appreciate your stance on who would be commissioner. Leadership is really near and dear to me. That's something I always take pride in. I've read numerous books about leadership. So just to have a little fun, let's get to know Jim. What are some of your? Just want to have a little fun here. What's some of your hobbies? What do you do in your private time? What are things you like? I'm into jiu-jitsu. I RV. John's into weightlifting. Tell us about Jim. I mean, let's have a little fun.
Okay. Well, so the truth of the matter is I don't do that much other than work. I've got 3 kids. I spend time with my 3 kids whenever. I mean, they're adults now, so I don't get that much time with them. But whatever time they give me, I'm grateful for. I'm married. I've got a wife. She's a wonderful person. I watch movies. I can quote more movie lines than probably anyone.
I'm going to have to battle you on that.
So I'm a huge rock and roll fan. If you guys look back on that wall there, those are concert posters for a group called the Foo Fighters. I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan. There's a funny story around that, but I won't tell it. And I'm reading a lot, man. I'm really, as a kid that grew up really in a defective educational system, but with a couple teachers that really believed in me, it put the bug in me to really want to know the world and to really understand it at a level that you guys understand. It's not just the surface crap. It's all the stuff that's around it, behind it, what it does well, what it doesn't do well. So I'm doing a lot of that too. Sounds pretty boring, I understand, but I'm a beach guy. So I love going to the Jersey Shore. It's when I was ever able to get away as a kid, I literally got a $1,500 Datsun that broke down on the way to the Jersey Shore. Right? Like, I've got great Jersey Shore stories. So I was just in Brigantine last summer with my friends from law school. I've got friends from every single walk of my life. The person that is helping me with communications was the woman when I was in Levittown and I was sleeping on that floor that was trying to help me get to college. She had a very educated family, a wonderful, wonderful Jewish family, and she helped me fill out all the applications. And so that's the other thing I do, which is I try and stay in touch with my friends because, in life, it slips by you, right? Life's moving so fast that important relationships go by the wayside. You have to be the constant gardener. So I do a lot of that too.
No, awesome. Man after my own heart. Jersey Shore, Brigantine, love it. That's where I spend my summers. So yeah, awesome. So,
but I'm a Phillies fan. But I'm so I got to get that out there.
Oh, that's it. You're done. Forget about it.
I knew.
Get him off. Did he just say you're a Phillies fan?
I did. I love New York. I do. So,
oh my God. How do you eat your pizza? How do you eat pizza, Jim? Do you eat it with a fork or do you fold it?
Oh, come on. Why? Are you...
Jim, I gotta ask you a question. Since you like the Phillies, I assume you've been out to Philadelphia, of course. Geno's or Pats or some other.
Oh, you know what? Honestly, in that debate, I love them both. I mean, I actually can't really. Maybe I don't have a sophisticated palate for this stuff, but I can't tell the difference between them. There's another one called Jim's too. I used to like Jim's a lot. So we were on South Street. It's funny. The first time I ever got mugged was on South Street. But
you said the first time. How many times?
Oh, just twice. Just twice.
The Phillies. All right. Well, we'll keep that. So listen. We thank you for coming on. Before we start to wrap it up, what's your message to the other candidates in the race? We're hearing that somebody else might sneak in. Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo might come in. What's your message to the other candidates in the race?
Yeah. So let me just deal with the two things. I could care less whether Cuomo comes in. You guys, I'm sure I know Andrew Cuomo. I sued him. I collaborated with him when I sued the de Blasio administration over the decrepit public housing communities and the way the infrastructure is falling apart. I represented his office for a period of time during the Tish James investigation. So I know that he says he's going to come in. If he comes in the race, good. That's up to him. The two things I want to say to the candidates in the race are this. I could care less who attacks me. I'm going to try to elevate the dialogue to get past the blood sport. Now, sometimes I stray, and I always feel bad about it, and I always apologize for it. But I would like this to be a campaign of ideals and ideas. And really, it's if we're talking about we're putting the Republican to the side for 1 second, because I don't know if it'll just be Curtis Sliwa or it'll be there'll be a primary there because someone else will come in later in the race. But with respect to the Democrats, they're going to have a heavy scrum of people. But you've got really Eric Adams and Cuomo, who I'll just describe as centrists, although I think they're more complicated than that. And then you've got a whole bunch of what I will call Democratic socialists. Some of them are card-carrying members. Some of them have socialist policies. And Stringer kind of, depending on the issue, floats back and forth between those things. So he's a little bit harder to pigeonhole, and he's the most one of the most experienced elected officials in that mix. And I think that it's really a choice. If it's a choice between me and them, it's a choice between two things. And this is what I'd say to them, and this is what I'd say to the voters. With respect to the socialists, it's really ideals, because I'm not a socialist. I don't believe in it. I don't believe that you can point to me to a successful example of a sustained socialist or communist government that also, because we're talking about both a political and an economic component of it, that has innovated, who's made people's lives better, that does anything but, give baby baskets out for free. So that isn't ideal, but it's also about ideas. And the truth of the matter is, whether it's the Cuomo, Adams people, Stringer, or what I'll lump together as all the Democratic Socialists, it is career politicians against outsiders. And I think that what you're going to see in the race, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted to get into the policy early, is that I am the person of looking outside of the mainstream, looking to see, how Republican-run cities or states deal with problems. I want to see, just like we talked about with the negotiator, right? I want to look at a problem comprehensively, completely irrespective of what government or whether red or blue or something else. So I think you've got a lot of what I will respectfully refer to as career politicians who talk a good game about the problems they're going to solve. And in fact, they've made many problems worse, and they've ignored a lot of problems, as opposed to someone that has the passion, the ability, the intellectual firepower, and the humility to come up with policies that are just better. They're better for people, right? And is willing to talk about the tough stuff. I mean, honestly, how many of these candidates are really, really talking about anti-Semitism? We've got hate crimes going through the ceiling. The last report that came out was that Jews went from something like 15% of hate crimes to 55%. Why? Because the Adams administration is not taking anti-Semitism seriously. He's going to all of these fundraisers by Jewish people in the real estate industry and saying, well, I spoke out. Yeah, well, you spoke out about it, but what did you actually do? So it's one of the first policies I put forward, because I want to be a mayor for everyone. I hate discrimination. I hate it. I don't care who it is that's on the other end of it. It ruins lives. And no one on the far left is protecting Jewish people. And so in any event, I hope people understand that comes at a political cost, right? Especially for a first-time candidate trying to break through. The easiest thing for me to do is to stay in my lane and not talk about anything too controversial. And you can imagine that the campaign people are not happy with the kind of race I'm trying to run, because it's very out-of-the-box thinking. But that's the idea piece that I'm talking about. Tired old strategies or tough talk about problems that you failed to solve when you had the chance, as opposed to someone who's actually gone into battle again and again and again and gotten real results for people. The choice is clear. How's that?
I think that you come off as genuine and honest, and I think that which is something what we want to see, right? You said you're not a politician. I mean, you have a law background. It's very impressive. You took on the mob, so obviously you have guts. We can tell. I mean, clear as day, you came on this podcast for an organic conversation. I want to thank you, and I appreciate it. So I think you provided a lot of good information. I think that you really did. I think kudos to you that you did change the course of the election on how this is going to go further, because you put pen to paper and talking about some tough subjects that we really see candidates shying away from, especially when it comes to the mandate and putting workers back. And I think it's just an easy stance. It's illegal. Put them back to work. Public safety, we want prosperity for New York City. We want people not to feel safe. We want them just to be safe, and it takes support of the police department. That's the biggest concern for me is qualified immunity. And the fact that you stand by qualified immunity is major for the police to do their job. So I just want to have a little fun. I want to thank you so much. You said you're a movie guy. I'm a movie guy. Give me a movie title that describes your campaign, if you got something.
Oh, come on. Gladiator or Braveheart, man. I've seen those two movies probably 50 times a piece.
Love it.
And they're long form.
In the long form.
Jim, we missed one thing though.
Sure.
Independence Party. What are you running at? What are you planning to run at? Can you tell us a little bit about the lawsuit you dropped about the Independence Party?
Yeah, this is so crazy. So when I first, understand this is not like some calculated manicured program that I had, and I was thinking about running for 6 months. This happened really in the aftermath of the Adams indictment, and me just being kind of completely frustrated by what the Democratic machine was turning out. So I did some research, and I was like, okay, I really want to run as an independent. How does that work? So I talked to lawyers, et cetera, and I did not know. I was like, well, I'll just run in the Independence Party. And I actually did not know that it was banned. They're like, no, you have to make up a name. You can be independent with a little I, but you have to make up a name. And by the way, they said the name can't include the word independent. I was like, what? I'd like, you can't have a party that's like the United States Party or the America Party or the New York Party, because then people would be confused. Did the state sponsor this party? That's the reason that there are some banned words. But independent, like, why is that banned? I had no idea. So I did the research, and I found out that 2 years ago, the legislature of the state of New York claimed that they were trying to avoid voter confusion, because people that were registered as members of the Independence Party, some very small percentage of them believed that they were just independent, not that they were in the Independence Party. That wasn't why they banned it. They banned it because they didn't want competition. They didn't want a third party choice. And we've seen this from Albany again and again and again. And I was shocked, frankly, that Kathy Hochul signed the bill. But once I realized it, I tried to figure out whether it was reported in like the New York Times or the Post. And what I realized, it was the Daily News that really had a campaign against the Independence Party. And I didn't fully understand why, but I didn't even care, because the reason that the legislature did it was a lie. And you know that because they based their conclusions about confusion on a survey that wasn't even an actually commissioned survey by some third party, but it was a local newspaper's informal survey that was 9 years old, right? Now, understand, at its height, the Independence Party in the state of New York had 500,000 people. Democrats didn't want that, primarily Democrats. Republicans didn't want it either, but it was mostly the Democrats that decided to do this. So I filed a lawsuit. That's what I do. People are going to see more of that's coming. I filed the lawsuit on behalf of the campaign, but also to right a wrong. Our parties should not be banning things that they don't like just to reduce voter choice. Citizens of New York should have the ability to vote for an Independence Party candidate. And so I'm bringing the party back.
I like it, and it's unfortunate in New York that you have to have a party name, but I like your stance on that. I think the position's great. Jim, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honestly, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and I hope that eventually we have follow-up conversations live, and we could really have more engagement with our friends and listeners. I want to thank our friends and listeners for being here. I apologize. There's some super chats here, coffee and donuts, a lot of great questions. We just didn't want to go totally off course. But Jim, would you be willing to come back here one day and engage the
No way.
chat?
No, this was too tough. No, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd love.
I just got a question. I know we know where to find you. Are there any organizations that you're a part of, like VFW, American League? Is there any organizations that you're a part of, or any fraternal organizations that we can tell the public who you are and anything you belong to?
No, I mean, I've been on boards for not-for-profits that I care about over the course of time. There's so many of them, like the Fund for Modern Courts. There was a group called Day One that was trying to protect women from dating violence. But my causes are many. I don't want to necessarily single any of them out because there's a lot of them. So what I would like to single out is for those people that are skeptical and upset and don't trust. I just want you to understand that I understand why. I'm not asking you to do anything, to like me, to agree with me, any of it. If I asked you to do those things, then you knew that you couldn't trust me, right? What I hope that you learn to trust me is because I see and hear people and understand why they think the government sucks, and I don't, and it shouldn't. Right. And I'm here for one reason and one reason only. I don't want to be governor or president or any of that stuff. I want to govern the city of New York for for 8 years and then go back to a firm that I've worked 10 years to build that I had to put my part on hold, which was not easy. So I just want people to understand, whether they believe me or they don't, it comes from a good place. And I want my legacy to be, he worked really hard and he tried to do the right thing, whether or not anyone was looking.
I love it. So listen, everybody, there'll be links to donate to Jim's campaign down in the chats. Jim, if you want, can you just tell us where we could find you on social media, where we could donate to campaign?
Oh, well, that was nice. You didn't have to do that. But so my website is jim4nyc.com. That's Jim, FORNYC.com. As I put out there, I'm really just trying to get small dollar donations to get closer to the 50% point on matching. I don't need to get matching right now. And by the way, my fundraising numbers are going to be big. So my community has really stepped up for me in a way that I'm really proud of. And my social media handles are the same. It's at Jim4NYC. So when my personal account gets restored, which I hope is in the next couple of days, that's Jim Walden _ESQ. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the conversation, and go Stoicism, man.
That's right. Stoicism should be the forefront of leadership. Absolutely. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time out. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I hope we get to speak again. John and I are definitely impressed that you're willing to put pen to paper. You show a lot of courage, a lot of balls. There's a lot of people that have deflected from coming on this podcast. And you know what? You didn't shy away from it right away. So, listen, I have nothing but respect for you. I'm impressed. Thank you so much. And I hope we speak in the future. Thank you. Good luck to you.
Jim, take care, brother. Thanks for coming on. Great show. Great show. So, all right, guys. Yeah, that was it. That was Jim Walden. I got to be honest. Like I said in the beginning, I'm impressed that he's willing to have the conversation. I mean, I'm not going to corner him and attack him and eat him alive on the mandate. I think it's a conversation that we need to have. I think it's a conversation that needs to be brought into the mayoral race. But he didn't shy away from any questions. Did he box himself in on any questions? No, he didn't. I mean, and I got to be honest, if I was running, I wouldn't either. So I kind of respected the whole thing. Obviously politics is a crazy game. Legality is wild thing. I got to admit, I'm a little impressed. I'm not going to lie. I was impressed that he was willing to come on here. I'm going to rewatch the show. Obviously, I'm going to analyze it. I'm going to analyze the things he said. But I think Eric's 100% right. I think he showed a lot of balls coming on here. He didn't know any of these questions. He didn't know where we were going with anything. And again, I apologize too. I don't think we set the ground rules ahead of time. Like, we can't just throw in all your crazy questions. We'll try to have him come back on and just have basically like a town hall where you guys ask questions and he just asks the questions, and we'll and then we'll monitor them. But I really wanted to get the issues that New York City's currently facing and the issues that he could actually do something about as a mayor. And I hope we did that. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but like, that was what we were trying to bring out. Again, this was just an introduction. First New York City mayoral candidate to have come on this podcast. And I think it's big. Juju loves to say, small podcast that nobody cares about. But yet we see Eric Adams going on a podcast that the host is full of shit and absolutely nobody cares about. So
I like him. Listen, I'm not saying I'm endorsing him, but I like him. Well, when I got to meet so far, I think he came from a place of honesty. I think that his background was reflective in his responses, right? You could tell he has a background as an attorney, and I would expect that, when we answer questions, I'm sure people will it will come out that we have a background in policing. We'll answer things a certain way, but he was honest. The only thing I wasn't crazy about, to be honest, he seemed to hone in on this potential fraud when it comes to the mandate, as far as some potential cops coming back to work. But overall, I think it came from a place of honesty. I think he was pretty genuine and willing to answer questions. So for that, I will say I give him a lot of credit. I think it was impressive that, and I want our friends and listeners to know, absolutely no questions were prepared at all. We just said, hey, would you be, he said he wanted to come on the podcast. And we said, hey, we do it live, or we have an appearance could be recorded. He actually wanted to come on live, so he's willing to engage the public. I want to apologize to our friends and listeners. We didn't read out all the super chats, and you gave us coffee and donuts, and thank you. And some of them were great questions. We just didn't want to take it off course, so I apologize for that. But thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe. What is Patrick down here? This podcast stunk. No argument.
No, get those bums out. No rocket fuel.
No rocket fuel promotions. No mentoring being arrested as a teen. I feel like I just watched Fonzie jump the shark. LOL. Yeah, listen. Sorry to disappoint, bro. we got to get back to EDM. We got to get back to RV life. You're right. We need rocket fuel T-shirts, because these people are seriously. We should put a picture of somebody getting promoted with rocket fuel up their ass, because it's amazing how they got promoted. Angry T-shirt, John. But I really appreciate it. John, ultimately, he seems like a nice guy to me. Seems like what I like about him is I think we can relate, right? I mean, I grew up poor, you grew up poor, and he was sleeping on the floor to go through school. So this is someone we can relate to. I'm not saying that I have a problem with people that were born wealthy, but this is someone I can relate to. Seems like a nice guy, willing to have conversations. Does that mean I agree with everything? No, but he's willing to have a conversation, and he didn't shy away from it either. He didn't get angry. He didn't get emotionally invested. So I think the conversation went well.
No, I thought it was a great show. I enjoyed it. I like to get to meet him. I feel like I know him a little better now. And like I said, a lot of people were calling me last night. Oh, you gotta ask this, you gotta ask that, and I'm just like, dude, I'm like, and I told you this, before you even came on the podcast, Eric. Before we decided we were gonna join up together and team up. I said, I was like, the last thing I ever want to do is recreate the Sean Hannity, Bill de Blasio interview. I thought that was the worst interview I ever seen in my life. I was like, he could never get out what he was going to say. Now, Bill de Blasio wouldn't answer a question that Sean Hannity had. He tuck-tailed around every question. He really wasn't direct on anything. But all Hannity did was try to force him to answer the question. And it was such a horror. It was horrible to watch. And I was like, just let the guy answer the question. Follow up with it. If he doesn't answer it again, move on to the next topic. That's it. You didn't answer the question. Okay, no problem. Okay, what else? And I think that's the problem, is people want to win conversations. People want to win debate. And honestly, it's the last thing I ever want to do. I just want you to hear what I have to say. And you could say whatever you want after that. Just hear what I say. I'll be respectful to you. You hear what you say. And I think that's the way to conversate with people. I think that as adults, that's how we should be teaching our children to conversate, how to solve these problems. My biggest problem around the mandate is I wasn't allowed to ask a question or have an opinion. Marlon Bethel wasn't allowed to ask a question or have an opinion. And I thought that was absolutely horrible. I think it's demeaning as humans. I think it's demeaning to do to anybody for any cause or any reason whatsoever. If what you're saying is true and virtuous and the stance that you're going to stand on, you should have no problem to be able to articulate that and answer questions. I think Jim 100% did that here. He had no problem standing on that pedestal and answering questions. Did he sign off? Oh, John, I'm gonna get you back with back pay. No, he absolutely did not. I'm probably one of the biggest voices when it comes to this. And I'm sitting here saying right now that if I was running for mayor, would I be a little bit stronger? Yeah, but I'm honed in on the issue. I would be able to tailor policy that would go in on that. Nobody is as invested into this as the people that have been affected. And that is just what it is. And I don't expect anybody to.
Well, that's what I expect from leadership. Which is what I liked about him, is if you listen to some of his responses, and I know we'll go back and watch it, but if you listen to some of his responses, he's shown a position of leadership because he's willing to delegate authority to people that know better than him. He wants to have a panel. He wants to have people that are delved in like yourselves and Marlon that really understand the mandate far better than he does, because he's saying that's not his wheelhouse, but he wants to find the people that know it. He said the same thing when it comes to find a police commissioner. Now, some people are going to agree or disagree, I think, but it's a good approach. What he's saying was he's trying to find the people that he could refer to, that could be his confidants, that he could delegate to find him purposeful people to be police commissioners. That's what you want from leadership. It's not someone that says, "Hey, I'm the best," right? Like Eric Adams, I'll reign. I'm the best. You want someone who says, "You know what? I'm going to utilize my resources, and I'm going to have the right people find me the best. So to me, that's great leadership quality already. So, and I do think that today with this podcast, with this interview, changed the course of this election, because it's now going to force the hand of other candidates to put pen to paper. So, and that he's willing to put pen to paper and say, hey, here's a document that you could actually hold me accountable. So it's a smart tactic.
Yeah. No, Mark Robinson says the mandate was illegal. It's a moot point. I agree with you, but he doesn't understand, and no one's going to I could sit here and articulate a million ways that it was illegal. I could articulate what fraud was committed at the behest of each New York City agency. I could tell you what laws. Nobody's going to be able to tell you that. Nobody. I'm sorry. Like and I think some people that were even affected wouldn't be able to articulate it the way that I'm going to. Delved into this. I spend probably 2-3 hours a day reading up on the laws, on court cases. I'm honed in on the issues nationally. I just don't think anybody's really there at that point. Mike Freed says, what were your guys' thoughts on the process for police commissioner? I think it will be someone from law enforcement, but not NYPD. I don't know who his pick was going to be, and I don't think he would pigeonhole in it. And I got to be honest, I don't love the panel, because the panel is more of the same. If we want different results, we have to not do the same things. And, like I said, I will never diminish Bill Bratton's career. I think he's a policing genius. I think he did not show the moral integrity or courage when he worked for Bill de Blasio. He ran out the door and never told us why. Because, obviously Bill de Blasio was anti-policing, he knew that the city was take a spiral. I think Bill Bratton going forward, I'm not a fan of. Ray Kelly, I am. I think that his style, although it was some would say totalitarian, or he was a micromanager, I think that was a great process to keep corruption out of the NYPD. I think that we need to be held accountable for the smaller things to prevent the bigger things. I think that has not happened in this police department, and that's why we're seeing from the top all of the corruption that's coming out, is because the little things were let go. And the same thing when we see it out onto the street. So although I'm not saying that their voices shouldn't be involved in that conversation, Ray Kelly's a very older man at this point. I know I've heard him speak. He seems very clear and articulate to me still at this point. But I think there needs to be some lower down voices too as well. I think some rank and file people, some people in the city, maybe even some anti-police advocates in there. Because I think it's a bigger conversation. And again, I don't really think it matters who the police commissioner is, because ultimately the mayor is the de facto police commissioner. And that is just the current system that is in place today. And unless that changes, I don't see anything else changing unless we have a good mayor who's pro public safety.
That's why I've been saying it. We said on a prior podcast, I think it was about 6 months ago, and I still believe in elected officials. And I believe that if each county or each borough was its own police department and each one had its own sheriff and elected official, I think it'd be far more effective than what we have right now, and the mayor being ultimately the de facto police commissioner. That's the bottom line. No matter who gets elected, it's still the mayor that's actually in leadership, because the police commissioner is sort of like the middleman and a buffer, and still has to answer to the mayor. So I think it would be far better if each borough was its own police department, had its own elected official. I think we would see far more success. We're years away from that, but I like his ideal of consulting people, but I wouldn't necessarily let them pick. I think we need new faces. Ray Kelly's been around a long time, and Brad, but we need new faces and we need new ideas, and we need change. We do. We need change, and I agree with you. That would be much of the same.
No, and Juju wants to leave One Police Plaza and go get Sophie's Cuban on Fulton. So he's asking if we could wrap it up. Yeah, no problems, Juju. We don't want, but so he wants to make sure that.
What overtime you using? What
overtime code was that? Was that the World Trade Center code? So yeah, listen. So like I said, listen. This podcast could have went on all day. I think there's a million more issues surrounding New York City. People talking about here, rent, inflation. A lot of those stem from the migrant crisis. A lot of them stem from the open borders. I don't don't know how much a mayor could do at that point. A couple of questions now that I'm thinking about that I should have asked that we didn't. What's his like how is he going to attract business back to New York City? How is he going to attract residents back to New York City? That was a big one I think we missed. I just remembered it right now. So it is what it is. Obviously, we're just two dumb lieutenants talking smack. So
there's so much information. Like, I was telling you, I would love to get into into the illegal weed shops and stuff like that. It's just so much. I mean, New York City is so vast, and a lot of our friends and listeners, they actually had some great questions. It's just too much. It would take us hours. So I think it would definitely have some follow-ups with this. Stephen S., shout out to you. I agree with what you're saying here. He said, list to the rank and file, not just the bosses or professional activists. I agree. I think part of that panel, I would like to see an actual, just a long-time police officer. It would be great to have like a 25-year veteran police officer part of that panel. Someone that's actually had their boots on the ground the entire career, who's had the vision to see what's going on above him, had the skills to manage people above him. I think you need boots on the ground to be part of that panel. So, Stephen S., shout out to you. I agree. If that's what you're referring to, I think so. I think you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah, so I mean, Bronxilla asks, is there a recording available? Yeah, so recording, I mean, these go out on, you're coming in by way of X. They're out on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, all the links for Jim's social media, learn more about his campaign promises, those are all there. So you could go to YouTube, you could go to Rumble. Same's true there. We're actually up on LinkedIn, but I don't really promote anything there. The show gets streamed there. I don't think anything really else goes up there. So yeah, I mean, you could always get this. You could always get this recording to replay. YouTube pays us the most money, so we appreciate it if you could go to YouTube to watch it, to do it. So I think that would, that's always there. Our YouTube channels at The Finest Unfiltered. Our Rumble channels at The Finest Unfiltered. You could also rewatch it on X if you want to watch it on X. It's up at The Finest Cast, at Eric Dim, at John Macari. We always reshare all the stuff out. So whichever one of those channels you go to, you'll see it retweeted on there or tweeted out on there. And then you could always watch it on X too if you'd like. Whatever you guys choose. I'm definitely going to rewatch it at some point. I'll probably re-listen to it while I'm working out. But like I said, I'm impressed. One huge negative, the dude's a Phillies fan. I love the Jersey Shore. I like Brigantine. I like a lot of parts of South Jersey to visit. But when it comes to sports, when it comes to anything, I'm a New Yorker through and through. Knicks, I'm a Yankees fan, but I will 100% support the Mets any day over the Phillies. New York Giants, New York Jets, definitely not the Eagles,
At least he doesn't eat his pizza with a fork.
That's true.
That kills me though. If you see a man eating pizza with a fork, like, oh my god, cut it out with a fucking knife. Come on. But hey, listen, it's a great conversation. I think we'll have more politicians on here coming, moving forward. I would like to see. I would like to see. So for the unions that are watching this, you need to contact Jim and find out what else is in store, because he's looking to support the members to bring them back. So if you actually care about your brothers and sisters, you care about your membership, let's get these guys back. Let's get them back to work. Let's get them back pay. So listen, the bottom line is that's a great start. And I hope, he says he's a man of his word. He put pen to paper. I hope if he is in fact elected that these guys come back to work. That's ultimately, I want a candidate that's going to make these guys whole again, put them back to work and vindicate them, because this should never happen again. That's the bottom line. It should never happen again. And I agree. I get the frustration with some of our friends and listeners. It's basically like, can we stop the conversation? Can we just say it was illegal and put them back to work? And I get it. I wish it was that easy. It should be. Ultimately, if the world wasn't so screwed up right now, it should be that easy. It was illegal. Can we just put them back to work?
Yeah.
It should be shut and closed.
I think so too. Like I said, it saves the money. The money's a drop in the hat. It's nothing. It's better than, I'd rather give the $19 million to get New York workers back to work than baby baskets. But Driver Seat says Adams just issued a statement that New York's Finest podcast will not be getting an invite to Jordan next Gracie's Mansion concert. Yeah. I don't think Eric Adams is a fan, but maybe he is. Maybe he is. Maybe he is. So I don't know. Any last words before we get out of here, Eric? Anything going on? Anything you want to talk about before we break out of here?
What kind of baskets do you think were handed around at Varma's sex parties? What kind of stuff do you think they had in those baskets?
They definitely had the freak off gel. Varma, he had his freak off gel. I mean, that article, I did a little hit on X yesterday.
Oh yeah, you gotta talk about that.
That article that came out from Jay Varma, it was absolutely disgusting. He posted an opinion piece in the Daily Beast where he was saying how he shouldn't have been shamed and he shouldn't have been canceled for having drug-fueled sex orgies prior to even implementing the mandate. And that's what he didn't talk about. So I did a whole I actually spoke about it for an hour. I woke up in the morning, I was enraged. And I thought I only talked about it for 10 minutes. And then when I got off, it was an hour and 10 minutes. I was like, oh my, I spent an hour and 10 minutes talking.
That's a hell of a monologue.
Yeah, Eric wasn't around. So I did that. That's on my X. Check it out. Actually, Steven Crowder, Louder with Crowder, actually liked it and followed it. And I was like, wow. And so now they're going to do another expose next week that's going to come out on it. So his producer had posted about that. So, I mean, it's definitely in the news. When we want to talk about the fraud and corruption, I put out his statement, his sworn statement, which I could bring in here in a minute. Yeah, let's do that. I'll bring in his sworn statement. Would you think about that? Would you think about that opinion piece that he put out? It was ridiculous.
I think it's further evidence that this guy should be in jail. I mean, he's doubling down on his opinion piece. He should be in jail. That's the bottom line. It's almost like we talk about the mandate. It was illegal. Let's put it back to work. This guy should be in jail. That's it. Plain and simple.
Oh, I agree. I mean, when we talk about fraud, I'm not, listen, I don't hate anybody that diminished their integrity and did that, gave a fake card because they wanted to keep their job. I don't hate any of you guys. And honestly, I don't want any to see anything bad happen to any of you guys. But it, what bothers me is that the way you talk about us, that wouldn't do that and that you don't stand with us. And that's the stuff that bothers me more. I think the fraud that happened from the people in charge of this is worse. So what I have up on the screen now is actually, this was a lawsuit. This was filed by, if you guys remember, the restaurants had sued over the mandate. They said it was illegal. You're asking us to enforce the law. We don't want to do that. We're not in the job of policing. We sell cookies. We sell food. We don't want to police our customers. It's dangerous. It doesn't make sense. So they sued Bill de Blasio. So there was a lot of pages of this deposition, but I only highlighted the part that I believe, I actually, I'm going to take it back. I don't believe that I am saying is complete perjury. And so what you see here is you see line 25. Obviously, all line 1 through 25 aren't there. I just cut that out and put that up on top. So what it says is here, I, Jay Varma, declare under penalty of perjury pursuant to 28 U.S. Code 1746 as follows. People who have recovered from COVID-19 should be vaccinated because research has not yet shown how long protection lasts following recovery. And people have had COVID can still benefit from the vaccine. Moreover, the COVID vaccine has been shown to offer those with a prior COVID-19 infection greater protection against reinfection. And now I'm going to play what he tells this girl, which completely contradicts what he says here. So, perjury. And this is only, by the way, one. He signed these things numerous times. And then, I've been showing you the testimonies, the other highlights. And again, I'm only going to put those out on my X. It's not going to go out live on anything else because the conversation still cannot be had freely. We will get pulled down. So all the other stuff, it only go out on my X. That's it. So as it relates to this, but this is what he says. This is the voice. He's speaking to the undercover reporter with Louder for Crowder.
And if you're 50 years old or above, you need 4 doses.
I'm sure that's consistent when they don't know cameras are running, right?
I know people that won't have sex with someone that didn't get the COVID vaccine. And I don't know enough to know if that's like
that's like a weird, I think it's a weird belief that somehow their body is different. It doesn't make any difference at all. Everybody's been exposed to the virus, and you're exposed to the virus because it breathed on you or because you got injected. It's the same immune response. Yeah.
Okay, so it turns out science is a thing, and that one looks kind of bad. But
so there it is, clear as day. He says there's absolutely no difference, but he swears to that there is a difference. So absolutely ridiculous, absolute perjury. It's not even debatable to me at this point.
That's it. He belongs in jail. I mean, it must be a slippery slope with all that lube, but yeah, he belongs in jail.
Well, he might like that part, but
yeah. Well, someone put a comment here. I think that for him going to jail is like Disneyland. We'll put that. It's hilarious. Hold on.
Are they gonna put him with? He wants to be put with Diddy. Yeah. He's like, can I put next to him? I know him. Yeah, but all right, people. I got nothing else. You got anything else over there?
No, listen. Thank you, friends and listeners. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow live early in the morning, 8:05 live, and of course for me, it'll be dark. It's going to be dark, of course, because there's still these fires going on here. So,
Smokey.
But thank you, brother. Thank you, friends and listeners. We appreciate it. And, watch the recorded, about the responses with Jim. Follow Jim and follow the other candidates. Take pride in what's going on in local politics, especially mayor of New York City. And if you don't live in New York City anymore, guess what? Just like us, you can still care. Juju says you can't care. We care. I have family in New York City. So does John. We care. We care what happens to you.
One question for you. One question for you, Eric, before we go. One question.
Sure.
Do you think any other mayoral candidates are going to come on this podcast, and should they?
That's a great question. It's a 2-part question. So the answer to that is no. I don't think they'll come on here unless they're pretty much forced, and because at this point, a long form podcast as we have exposes someone's real character and if they're actually lying or not. And that's one thing we got out of Jim. I think that you can tell that he's pretty much genuine and he's telling the truth. So should they come on here? Absolutely. I think they pretty much have to at this point. And that's why I say he changed the course and changed the election with coming on this podcast and putting pen to paper. Will they come on? I'm not sure. I don't think so, but I think they should and they need to.
I think we're going to see. I do think that we're going to see a couple other people reach out to come on after this. I wouldn't be shocked. I think some people that are going to shock. I think so. We might have some other candidates come on. I think they absolutely should, because again, the entire rank and file of the NYPD listens to us. We have teachers listening to us, New York media listening to us, EMS workers, firefighters. There were a lot of people tuned in today. The numbers say 800 here, but I think, by the end of the day, we're going to have, anywhere from 10 to 15,000 people across all platforms. And then within the week, it'll, those numbers will multiply significantly. So I think that this is a good platform. Regardless of how people feel about me and you, are we the best interviewers in the world? No, probably not. And that's why I think it's such a good flow, because I think that we're talking about things that people really want to know, the questions that we have as individuals. We try to bring in as many questions from the audience as we can, and while keeping on topic. And you're just not going to get that anywhere else. You know what I mean? You're just not. You're not. You're going to go on. You're going to watch it. You're going to have no debate. No one's going to see what you got to say. And it's completely different than any other platform out there. So are we the best? No, I think we're improving. I think we're getting better. And I think that any candidate that doesn't for any office in New York City is missing a huge opportunity. So let's see who reaches out. And if they don't, it doesn't matter. Let's see. Is Curtis Lewa willing to come on? I don't know. I doubt it.
I hope they come on. I think they should come on, not for the benefit of the podcast. I mean, is it a benefit for the podcast? Of course it is. But it's a benefit for the people and have these real conversations. I think as far as being the best interviewers, it's completely subjective. But I think ultimately, what people want is to see real conversations. And like Stephen S. here says, the interviews are genuine and organic. Yeah, I think that's what's really good about it. It's pretty much it's a genuine and organic conversation with people that can relate to each other, and that's ultimately that's why I think this is a success for the candidate, for us, our friends and listeners. They should come on here. So let's stay positive, right? Positivity, rainbows and sunshines.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, fellas. All right, ladies, gentlemen. New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast. We'll be back tomorrow, live 8:05. Looking forward to it. Eric, I'll see you soon, brother. All right, be back at you.
Take care.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.